Happy Halloween, creeps.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Like official Halloween, because today is your bonus creep.
Word. Happy and merry Samhain, everyone.
Yes. So
peace and love and good vibes only. I've been reading a few things that say because I follow a lot of like witch pages on Instagram, and right now the thing is, don't you hate the person that's always trying to tell you how to do your own witchcraft, because witchcraft is supposed to be a personal path and very I'm gonna say personal again, and then it's like the first one being like real offensive and like, that's not how you do that and this is not how you do that. But then when you clap back and be like, hey bitch, calm down, then automatically like, hey, peace and love, I'm just, and it's like, calm down bitch.
Yeah, I actually saw that girl Dana from Hell Yeah, which watch that show, anybody who hasn't seen Hell Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I follow Dana on Instagram, and she had actually seen that in someone else's comments, like she practices herself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was some really condescending thing, and she was like, oh, I remember when I was a young witchlet or some bullshit. But this girl Dana called her out on her Instagram and was like, this is precisely what we don't need. Like,
yeah.
assholes.
Yeah. And I was listening to this other witchcraft podcast. It's like a witchcraft paranormal podcast. And apparently in the community, I guess that's why there's like a lot of solitary witches, is because you always feel like you keep it to yourself, because if it gets out there that you're a witch, then other people who are witches too, they'll want to test you, like,
Yeah. Oh, you think you're a witch?
yeah, it's almost like you have to prove yourself to them. But it's almost like that's exactly what you're not supposed you know what I'm saying? Like, why? I don't understand that.
Anyway, this is a really weird rant.
Isn't it? Anyways.
So this episode is looking like it's going to be way long. Like 2.5 hours maybe. So you're in for the long haul. And this week we're doing, well, not this week. This is our Halloween special. So we're going to change it up a little bit. We're not going to be doing Dulce tells me a story, I tell her a story. For this episode, we interviewed 3 of our very close friends. They all have backgrounds in history and
being smart, basically.
Yeah, like they're way more academic than I ever was or ever will be. So we asked them for help because this subject is something that's close to all of our hearts, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop beating around the bush. It is the Hellfire Club in Dublin. For me, growing up, it was always like my granddad would point it out from the house and be like, just see that there? That's the Hellfire Club. And because we could see it from like upstairs in his house. And it's this gnarly looking building on top of this hill in the fucking middle of the mountains. And there's all sorts of mad stories from there. So what we tried to do, because I know a lot of other podcasts have covered it and I haven't listened to them or anything, and I'm not shitting on their parade, but what we wanted to do was try and find out the real history of it, not just the myths and legends, but the actual facts as much as we could, and then delve into our own personal experiences after that of the Hellfire Club. This episode is nothing but hellfire.
And it's a lot of me listening because I know nothing about the subject. I didn't even know it was real. And I didn't even know there was different factions, because there's the one in Ireland and then there's...
Oh, yeah, it was just like any like fraternity, like there's different...
Like
I think there's actually one in New York as well.
And shit like that. And the Boy Scouts.
Actually, Ben Franklin was a member.
Oh, the Boy Scouts?
Possibly, but the Hellfire Club.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, or maybe he wasn't a member, but he definitely visited.
Right on.
So anyway, the main story the main like spooky tale from the Hellfire Club.
Mm-hmm.
I did try and look it up so as I could get like as close to the real story as I could, but it's not actually that long.
Sick.
So I'm just gonna tell it as I heard it. I don't know when. It's just one of those stories. I feel like it was implanted in my brain.
Tell me a story.
I'll tell you a story. I'm gonna do Ghost Adventures voice for this.
I'm gonna do. Tee.
So it starts off, one dark and stormy night. Yeah, no, I can't keep that up for too long. But yeah, one dark and stormy night back in the 1750s or thereabouts, the Hellfire Club is in full swing. Everybody's up there drinking and gambling and doing all sorts of whatever goes on up there. Swinging, dude. But like I said, it's like a horrible storm out, pouring rain, and they get a knock on the door, and there's a stranger there, and he's well dressed, and he looks like could be one of them.
Yeah.
So they say, "Come on in out of the storm, sit yourself by the fire and get warm."
Sick.
Yeah. So he sits down, he's having a drink, and the lads are playing cards. So he joins in. It's a game of poker, and he's winning all night long, and they're getting drunker and drunker. And then somebody drops a card, or in one of the versions, this man is actually dealing, and one of the people only gets 2 cards instead of 3. So they look on the floor to see what happened to the other card. And when they look underneath the table, they see that this stranger has cloven hooves instead of feet. So with that, the man panics and he says, "That's the devil." And there's multiple endings here. 1, he shoots through the roof.
The devil.
The devil.
Okay.
The devil on Far Dove. 2 is he just bursts in a pile of smoke, or a puff of smoke, or whatever you want to call it, and he's gone. 3 is he grabs a maid and throws her in the fire, and while they're attending to the girl in the fire, they turn around, the devil's gone. So there could be many more endings or differences or whatever. That's the main story anyway. That's the general gist. Like I said, with a story like that, this place has to be full of ghosts, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a common theme. Like, I think the story for that other house, what's it called?
So Loftus Hall.
They have a similar story, right?
Yeah, very close to it.
Yeah, they're playing cards again. Apparently the devil really likes playing cards, and he hates keeping his human feet on because he always gets found out whenever he drops a fucking card. And why the fuck does he keep dropping cards? Like, it's the same story over and over again. He's like, you would think like, okay, I really got to hold on close to this fucking deck of cards so I don't drop it. You know what I'm saying? But he keeps dropping them.
Well, I think he's doing it on purpose.
Oh, okay. You don't
like
just
he's
think
like
he has
stringing
like
them along for so long, and then
you don't think he just has
boom.
like butter fingers?
I don't know. Like, put on a pair of fucking shoes if you're gonna be that.
Butter fingers.
Butter fingers. But yeah, so like this story is famous for being attached to Loftus Hall, and I can't actually fucking remember the other ones now. I should have written them down. But there's like 3 or 4 different big old houses or castles or whatever across Ireland that have this story, and I'm sure in other countries too.
I wouldn't be surprised if Leap Castle didn't have a story like this.
I mean, possibly, you know. So before we jump into this anyway, because there's a lot of references to random shit, Dulce is going to tell us what Newgrange is real quick.
Yeah, so just to reiterate in different words that other people might understand better, because like for me, like I need to be explained like I'm 5, like that Reddit subreddit.
Yeah.
So what's gonna go down is like, because these people that we interview are super freaking smart. They're gonna be dropping terms, phrases, and all kinds of things that some people just might go over your head.
Or
you know?
as well, they are Irish too. You know what I mean? Like we do use different words for different things or whatever. So it's not like we're trying to be condescending or anything. It's just so everybody has full understanding of the story.
Right. So one of the terms that you'll hear is Newgrange. Newgrange is a Neolithic monument, spiritual temple, passage tomb. It's called different things. Physically, like to your, like to the naked eye, it is a passage tomb.
Yeah.
What that means is it's like, think of the pyramids, how there's literal like hallways or passages, and surrounding it is just burial tombs. Like,
Yeah, the only real difference is like the shape on top. Like, whereas the pyramids are obviously these grand, majestic fucking pyramids,
Yeah.
or like the Mayan ones or whatever, like different variations. This is more basic. It's just like a big round dome of rock.
Yeah.
And also the doorways aren't hidden.
Right.
Well, on Newgrange specifically. And Amy talks on this real quick as well in her part. The way Newgrange is built is that on the longest and shortest day of the year, the sun
aligns
with the windows built in it.
Yeah.
So they're very, very magical, spiritual places.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hellfire Club just happens to be built on top of one, out of the stones that were originally used for that grave. So that's the kind of level of energy we're talking here.
Yeah. Irish legends say it was built by spirit folk, the Tuatha De Danann.
I don't actually know.
Boom.
Tuatha De Danann? I don't know.
Okay.
But what's the children of the goddess of?
Children of the goddess of Dana, or it could be Diana, a derivative of Diana. Other sources say it was built by Stone Age farmers. Anyway, it's older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza.
Yeah, so
just to give you an idea of how old these are.
Yeah,
this place is rather.
Basically what we're trying to do is figure out why this place has such a foreboding presence.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is down the rest of the country, but in Dublin anyway, it's
if I think if you're not jaded or just desensitized, I think it would be easy. You would feel something inside you that tells you that this is a special place.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's also as well, like at the bare bones of it today, it's the haunted house on top of the hill.
Yeah.
And so without further ado, let's jump on into our interviews. The first one being Amy
Plunkett,
who is going to cover all of the ancient history belonging to the place and also drop some knowledge on fairies for us.
Yeah.
With the Hellfire Club, everything like that, you obviously know the story of the hunting lodge and everything like that. I'm interested in everything before that. So before that, you have to go right back. And when it comes to Irish people in particular, they're a very superstitious bunch of people, especially when it comes to the dead and burials and, the fairies and all these sorts of things. Like a lot of people see fairies as these lovely little creatures, but Irish people don't, because they're not sound in any way, shape or form. They kidnap your children and they do all sorts of things like that, but that's a different story for a different day. As a result of the fear of the other world and the supernatural with the ancient Irish people, they would pay so much homage and respect to the areas in which they believed that they lived. So under particular trees, like a hawthorn tree, and they're known as fairy trees, and also burial sites. Now, everyone today in modern times, you have respect for a burial site. It's as simple as that. But the ancient Irish people had a fear of them nearly as well, because that's where the fairy folk lived too. And this other world was called the Sheed, which just means other world. And no one ever wanted to go there. You didn't want to be dragged down there kicking and screaming and stuff like that. And every Halloween, the Morrigan goes to the gateway to the other world and brings out all these horrible creatures and stuff like that, all these war pigs and stuff. And they're just very, very cool stories. But like that, these are all surrounding burial sites. So in order for you to kind of get the actual hill itself, the area of the Hellfire Club, so you have a lot of cairns, which is what the burial was known as.
And I used to actually be able to see one from my bedroom window.
That's amazing. They're everywhere. The thing is, there's actually a dolmen in an estate.
Sorry, that's what it was. It was a dolmen.
Yes.
Up on top.
Yeah, it's a burial site as well. It's a burial site too, different type of one. So you have the two stones and the capstone on top. Yeah. This is like a mound of rubble nearly, is what it looks like. So you have more people, more bodies buried in it, more remains inside it. They were normally cremated inside these terms, passage terms. The most famous one being Newgrange. But Newgrange doesn't actually look today how it would have looked thousands of years ago. So the Irish people have names for everything. Obviously, back when we used to speak Irish as our first language, everything had a name and everything meant something. So there's this thing called the metrical Dinshenkas, which is one of the oldest books going back through Ireland's stories. And it's basically, you can access it online. It's accessible to absolutely everybody, and it's amazing. And it's a text of early Irish literature, recounting the origins of place names, people, deeds that folks had done. So a very easy way I'm going to do this is Smithfield in Dublin, right? It's called Smithfield. But the Irish word is Margan a Firma, which means the farmer's market.
Sick.
So they don't translate. And all around Dublin and Ireland, you have dual signage. You have it in Irish and then you also have it in English. But with the colonisation with the English, they renamed a lot of places. What sometimes they'd done was they anglicised the Irish places. So Dunleary, which is quite Irish sounding and spelling, was just called Dunleary. But then you have places like Smithfield and Margan a Firma changing absolutely hugely, so you go back and it's just like, well, why was it called the farmers market? Because there was a farmers market there. But there was a farmers market there going back before Viking times, when Dublin was just a settlement and just like a little ford of Hurdleworth, which is where it gets its name from. Dublin, Blackpool, Vikings, all that sort of thing. But the original name of the hill, just Montpelier Hill.
Yeah, because it's quite an English sounding name, even to
it's
this day, like
English.
Montpelier.
Montpelier sounds like it would have been named after a family or something like that, quite a well-to-do Anglo family. And then there's obviously the hunting lodge there, but there's always something there before that, especially when it comes to we're a very old country.
Yeah, and we talk about the passage grave. I was saying it's more or less like building on a Native American burial ground. Like it's the exact same type of energy.
Oh my God, yeah. And they're ancient sacred sites. Like they're completely sacred, and unfortunately, around the time that, William Connolly chooses to purchase the area known now as Montpelier Hill, there wasn't really, they didn't care about stuff like that. So it wasn't just, in the building of the Hellfire Club that the stones from this burial site were used. Quarrying was something huge that was happening in the 18th to 19th century. So they're going around and taking stones from these burial sites to build and walls, roads, houses in this case sometimes as well. So you have a huge decimation of these burial sites and burial grounds and stuff as a result of the need for resources and raw materials and stuff like that as well. But with the ancient people then, so there's a quote from Owen MacNeill's book, and it says, "We come to Montpelier, or Montpelier, as the country people called it. Montpelier was probably a fancy name given to this hill by Speaker Connolly when he got possession of it, but hitherto I have not been able to discover its true Irish name." So he needs to go back further and further. So they believe that the original name for Montpelier Hill was hidden in plain sight all along. You have the different cycles of mythology in Ireland, and in one of them, which is the Ulster cycle, they have a story which is the destruction of the Derga's hostel. And in it is mentioned a place called Slieve Legca, or Lecca Ken Slieve, which is in the exact area that they placed the cairn of the Hellfire Club today.
Wow.
So yeah, you're going back through it, and it's in poems. It's called The Stones, The Gathering of Stones, on the mountain. You can go into the language and stuff, but it's ancient Irish, and there's very few people that can read and speak ancient Irish. It's not the same as the Irish that we have today.
Yeah.
It's completely different. But the fact that Slieve always means mound or mount or mountain, it features as the last stage of the journey before they attack the hostel. So geographically, it makes sense as well. So that, all of these stories and myths and legends, they're all completely available online and stuff if you ever want to read them. But again, you go back through it and you see that there. So it was initially used as a graveyard, like you said, very similar to an ancient burial site. But the thing about these areas is they were worshipped as well, and they were placed in these areas for a reason. So obviously with Newgrange, you have the alignment during the solstice, the winter solstice.
Yeah.
Some of them line up with the autumnal equinox, some of them line up with all different ones. And you can't imagine people from thousands of years ago that probably can't even write are able to build these absolutely amazing structures and align them so perfectly, because they use the stars and they use the night sky to find their way, to be able to tell time, days, all these sorts of things. So that's why with Samhain coming up, that's actually the Celtic New Year. So it's basically a big Happy New Year coming up soon, because they believe that, you know, this is the end of the year. This is the death of the year. It's the darkest time of the year. So then it has to start all over again with the cycle. So not sure what the cairn on the top, or of the Hellfire, of Montpelier Hill, would have been, but the excavation itself from the report, which like that everyone can access online, it was in 2016.
Right.
It was done by Abarta Heritage, with funding from Dublin City Council and diggers from the UCD School of Archaeology. Shout out there. But the excavation did find at the mound of the rear of the Hellfire Club, it represents a badly damaged remain of a Neolithic passage tomb. The dig proved that the mound represented the remains of a stone cairn, and they can also definitively demonstrate that the tomb had been very badly damaged by quarrying. Artifacts were also consistent with the Irish passage tomb tradition. These artifacts included megalithic art, a polished stone axe head, flint tools, and a possible mushroom-headed bone pin. So you have, like, it's exactly what you think it looks like. It's like a really long pin about that, sorry, my balance. And it's got like a mushroom head on the top, and like way back when people would have used it to like close their clothes or their clothes and stuff like that. So they would survive because they're bone, like, you know, flint, axe heads, they're stone. And like that, you see the art, and the art from back then, it's quite crude art, but it's absolutely beautiful. And so basically, yeah, during the dig, what they do is they do like a test trench, and that's very near to the site in itself, and they found a lot of like that material items up there. They knew that there was something there, because generally when it comes to Ireland, if you read back through history, and that's a great thing about archaeology and history do go hand in hand, but they're not mutually exclusive to each other. Archaeology, you're looking for evidence, but archaeology can also use folklore in trying to gain further knowledge about what's actually going on at that time. So I know myths are commonplace all around the world, but when it comes to the very specific ones in specific areas, there has to be some truth that started it somewhere. Like things go from a mountain to a molehill, or like Hellfire Hill, whatever you want to call it. But like they do change over time, and stories always change. So when it comes to the site itself, if you look at the aerial photographs, you'll see a ditch around the back of it.
Yeah, and we were saying as well, like when you're actually in the Hellfire Club itself, well, obviously if you're up in the back room at the top, you're looking out, you can physically see like the shape of what was once there. Like, and we were saying, like, there's no trees there, there's nothing.
That's where the kind of fairy lore comes from as well, because those on a much, much smaller scale, they're kind of like fairy rings. So like that, nothing grows there, and people don't touch them. I don't go near them. There's obviously stories about people knocking them down on their land, and they like die of heart attacks a couple of weeks later. They lose their fortune, their farm equipment stops working, their animals start dying. Like there's a lot of folklore and stories online about going over a fairy ring, or what it actually is a burial.
Yeah, and as well, like it's not only in Ireland. This is, I know from other podcasts and stuff, like that Iceland in particular is also, like, their government are strong believers in, they call them the Hildafolker, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
But to the point where, like, within recent times, like within the last 20 years, they have spent millions and millions of euros or whatever currency they use, like building a highway to avoid the Hildafolk sites.
That was kind of touched on that movie that we saw recently. Remember? About Eurovision?
Oh, yeah, actually.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
With Will Ferrell. Yeah, exactly. So that movie is obviously like making a joke of it, but this is true. Like, this is how people
we kind of done the same thing with Tara. Like, there was due to be like a motorway built
Yeah, and there
very,
was
very close, and it was like protested against, is everything like that. But then again, we wouldn't have our, the respect for our sites that like Iceland would have, to be fair. But I mean, no, like it's great. That's what's great about folklore. Like you can find similarities between almost every culture when you go back through time, essentially, and it's
like
absolutely beautiful.
And it starts to kind of shed a light on where the stories would have come from. Even like this story of the devil coming in and all that, like obviously, like we're not taking in everything from that story.
No,
Oh my
no,
God,
you
this
have
is
to
a
take
fact.
it with a grain of salt. Like you absolutely have to take it with a grain of salt.
But at the same time, we were looking at like some of the murders that are on record that did take place, and the stories, you can start to like see where the myths and the stories start to overlap, like where the fact comes into play.
Absolutely.
And that's like more or less what we're trying to do with this episode, is just kind of get this blend of why is it such a scary place? You know what I mean? Why is it still got a name in modern times? Like how far back does this go? Like what years do you think like this passage grave, like I know that's going to be
dates, well, not exact dates, but we have in and around dates of when they first appeared on the continent of Europe around 4600 BC.
Wow.
So that they're so old, like, I mean, this is the Neolithic period. We were farmers, hunter gatherers, all that sort of thing.
Because I think a lot of the times when people think like old history, they're thinking like medieval or whatever, but
this
really
is ancient history.
Yeah,
this is
you know what I mean?
incredibly old. Like that Newgrange is older. I'm sorry I keep using it, but it's a really good point of reference because so many people know about it. But that's older than the pyramids and Stonehenge.
And that's what I was gonna say as well. Like the other thing people don't think, like when you're thinking about Ireland or probably like anything, like what I personally don't think of it like this. But you're not like when someone talks about a passage grave and you're digging down into the earth and walking down these like tombs and it's like thousands and thousands of years old. People are thinking like Indiana Jones, the pyramids in Egypt, like some.
But there is a similarity between those burial systems if you think about it.
But this is what I'm saying. It's more or less the exact same thing. It's a different finish to it.
That's what's magic about it as well. And the thing about Ireland, over here and the passage and everything like that, like Yeats has a great quote, and it says, "In Ireland, this world and the world we go after death are not far apart." And it's because they believe that we were so close to that veil because we were so in sync with those spirits and ancestors and everything like that, that if you walked into a passage tube, you're through.
You're gone, yeah.
And this world they believe is never far away. It's beneath a tree. It's through a doorway. It's through an ancient castle ruin. Where it came from, I'd love to be able to put my finger on it. I think most people would just like, well, where did this story come from? Where did that story come from? Ireland has very well known history of oral folklore and oral tradition, and stories are passed down throughout generations.
Yeah.
And how they become written down is when, like that, Christianity comes along and these monks in training and priests in training are learning how to write. So they have to transcribe these old ancient stories. So that's how they become written down. That's why you have different, slightly different versions all around the country. Like as recently as I think it was the 70s, you have like families like killing women because they thought that they were changelings.
Yeah, Jesus.
Which are, they believe that your baby could be stolen by the fairies and replaced with a fairy baby that looks the exact same.
Yeah, an identical copy. Like.
Yeah, these children, they don't emote, they don't look you in the eye, they don't this. So you have these like tick lists of what a changeling is. The way to find out if it is or not is by throwing it in a fire. So that happened up recently in the 70s. Do you know? So like it is a thing that's still ever present in the back of your mind. Like I'm sure if you spoke to your grandparents, they would have a lot more superstition than maybe you would. Do you know what I mean? It changes with generations, I suppose. But there's still something innate in the back of your mind when it comes to stuff like that, that you just something like raises on the back of your neck.
Yeah, and you just know, yeah, this is bad news.
Back off. But like passage graves and that in itself, they were used for ritual. They were used for like again up where Nouse is, there's an altar stone out the front of it. They're set up in specific areas for specific reasons. But when it comes to like that, the history and the folklore and all that of the Hellfire Club, when it comes to like the older periods, it would have been a revered area as opposed to a feared area, if that makes sense.
So that, like, what I'm thinking like right now is whether this place was, well, we know that it was used for burials, but regardless of who or what they were burying up there, it would have been a celebration. Like, you know what I mean? Like they would have had feasts, and like that's a lot of emotion going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That
throughout,
emotion
like,
hangs around.
yeah, thousands of years. Like it goes back to that stone tape theory. Like, you know, it sets the tone,
It does.
literally. So I mean, that in itself, like, is bringing enough energy to it. Like that's why, like, 90% of people reckon that anywhere is haunted these days. Like, oh, there was a murder, or you know, whatever. It's like this emotional energy that gets left behind, right?
You do have a historical memory, an emotive memory. You know, something has to stay there. Energy it's never destroyed. It changes, like, you know. So I mean, something has to linger, absolutely. And if you have a graveyard up there, which probably depending on the time of year, you don't know what's going on up there. There could be ritual sacrifice going on up there. There could be, like that, your seasonal celebration. There could be many, many different things going on up there. And lots of evidence of burning up there. So for example, like there might not have been settlement on top of the hill, but there's a lot of activity on the top of that hill because they found the charcoal remains up there from many, many different fires. Fire is something that is hugely goes hand in hand with ancient Celtic pagan burials of the time, like. And they do change like that, minimally in some cases, and in other cases, like structurally, for example, the pyramid and say the tombs that we have over here, like ours, like that can sometimes look like a pile of stones.
Yeah.
But they also took like stones from different parts of the country to put in these areas.
Specifically,
so, yeah, so like you would have gotten stones used in the tombs in the Boyne Valley from Wexford. Okay. And these are massive. So how did they get them up there? Like these are all like, these are used for a reason and they're used with an intent. Obviously we can't read their minds from way back when, so we can't exactly know why, but we can theorize how we can do that by using folklore as well at the same time. You have the evidence in your hands.
And that would be like Wexford to the Boyne Valley is what? Like, say if you were to drive that now, how long would that take you?
Dublin to Wexford probably about 2.5 hours. So you're talking probably about 3.5 hours, maybe 4 in a car.
Yeah, and that's with modern motorways, highways, and cars.
Like you have to think of the amount of time it must take for these lads to build this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and Newgrange is not the only tomb up there. Like you had so many other, like there was settlement around it, there was everything. This was one of the holiest places in Ireland back then. And it's magical. Like you go there, it's absolutely magical. My ashes are being scarred there when I die. But it is beautiful, and you can well believe when you go somewhere like that I could well believe that there's something else going on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was what Amy had to say.
Yeah.
And we will hear from Amy again. She'll be the last section of the show today. Once we're all talking about our personal experiences up there. So again, like we're just back focusing on this mad, heavy energy, right? And that negative energy is still lasting today. And I want to talk real quick. Literally just after a quick Google search, I pulled up this story from 4 years ago only. 3 kids go camping up by the Hellfire Club. 2 guys and one of their girlfriends. One of their moms drops them off at the car park and they hike on up. This is like middle of the day. Anyway, while they're up there, they're like getting their little campsite ready or whatever, and they start they set a fire, and all is going well. And then they notice that there's another tent like only about 50 meters away from their own, and there's an older dude there. He's 28. And after a while, he comes over and just introduces himself, and like, you know, everything's going fine. He seems lovely. And after a while, they head back into the woods to get more firewood So the girl and one of the guys goes off in one direction, and this older guy and the other kid go in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a quote then from the Irish Times. As the 17-year-old was about to get firewood, he was grabbed from behind by the accused, who put his left hand across his mouth and attempted to cut his throat with the knife. He was sliced across the throat 3 times before he managed to push his attacker away. He fell to the ground, and Corbett then stabbed him in the chest. The knife broke, leaving the blade embedded in his chest. The knife no longer being useful, Corbett picked up a log and hit the teenager on top of his head. The other 2 friends noticed that something was happening and attempted to intervene. The young woman was first on the scene, where Corbett punched her in the face. She was knocked to the ground, and then he pulled her by her hair off of her boyfriend. Obviously, she landed on him. Corbett then started stamping on his first victim's head and pulling his hair. The 2 other teenagers again tried to go to his aid, but Corbett knocked the other young man to the ground and began to stamp on his head too. The second boy managed to run for help and came across people at the actual ruin. So the woods like surround this, like you're talking maybe 50 meters, 150 feet behind the Hellfire Club itself. So he ran out, and Corbett chased him, claiming that he was the one being attacked by these 3. So obviously the people saw that this wasn't the case, and they called the guards straight away. They called the police, and this guy just ran off into the forest. Like, this was 3:30 in the afternoon
Mm-hmm.
on just a regular old day.
So what happened to this guy, and why did he do it?
I mean, I don't know why he did it. He was still claiming that the kids attacked him when he had no like wounds or anything on him. You know what I mean? He, like, you don't get attacked by someone and then try and slit their throat 3 times. You know what I mean? But I did happen to read another article from this June or July. That same guy has just been handed another sentence, very light sentence because it's in Ireland. He stabbed his prison guard. He tried to choke another prison guard with his sock, a female prison guard. So obviously, like, he's not well in the head. What the fuck was he doing camping up at the Hellfire Club in the like, you know what I mean? Like, there's lots of stories like this that you hear. And I was literally talking to a friend of mine from school only a few weeks back. If he hears this, he'll know that I've stole his story. But him and his friends went up camping there like less than 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. We were all still in school at this stage. And they're just trying to have a good time or whatever. And while they're sitting up there in the woods, they just get surrounded by this gang of, I'm just going to say delinquents, because I can't think of a nicer word. Yeah, they just get surrounded and they get tried to rob their shit and do whatever, like, you know. So this place is still to this day just known as a bad area.
Bad news.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like still, that was our biggest fear going up there when we were doing our little like ghost hunting trips or whatever. Like, we were just going up trying to have some fun. But the whole time we're thinking,
was somebody out there?
Yeah.
Just waiting.
Yeah, there's other stories of people up there just like, you know, regular, having the crack, whatever. And this guy shows up late at night. They're just up there having a few drinks and, you know, nothing crazy. And this random dude shows up with like a plastic shopping bag in his hand and just walks straight up into them. And he's like, "All right, lads, how's it going?" And they're like, "Who the fuck is this?" But, you know, they're like, "Oh, what's going on, man?" Anyway, pretty soon he starts acting kind of weird and saying stuff like, "You guys were meant to meet up here tonight, right?" And they're like, "Oh, don't know what you're talking about, pal." Anyway, I think he like leaves the bag behind him and walks out as if he's going to go on the phone. And the lad's checking the bag and there's like a big fucking butcher knife in the bag and all. And they look back out and your man's gone. So whoever he had arranged to like meet up with to do whatever didn't show up, or did show up and saw this other gang of guys in there, you know, just having a good time and like fucked off.
Yeah.
So it's just full of these fucking weird ass stories still to this day.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's Carl Gill. He has more facts on the modern history, less modern than what I've just been talking about, but
yeah.
He's going to talk about the actual Hellfire Club and the founding of it.
Building that we now know as the Dublin Hellfire Club was built first as a hunting lodge by William Conley. William Conley was one of the wealthiest people in Ireland and probably one of the richest people in Britain as well. The building was built in 1725, but at that time there was no like Forbes 100 rich list or anything like that. But if there was, William Conley would have been at the top of that list, probably for both Britain and Ireland. He had made his money doing land sales on behalf of the king, selling land belonging to Irish people to rich British people.
Land.
Stealing, yes. He was also the Speaker of the Irish House of Commons, so that's like the chairperson who controls the meeting of Parliament. But he bought the land from Philip Wharton. Now, Philip Wharton was, his mother was a Loftus. They owned the land at Rathfarnham Castle. But Philip Wharton was also the founding member of the English Hellfire Club in London.
Okay.
So he sold the land. He inherited it from his mother and sold it very soon afterwards to William Conley. William Conley then built the hunting lodge on the top of Montpelier Hill.
Right.
And 4 years later, William Conley died. Now, as we know, he pulled apart the tomb, the passage tomb that was at the top of the hill to build the Hellfire Club. And he could have literally built it anywhere else. He owned all the land from Rathfarnham Castle all the way over to the Wicklow Mountains, a huge amount of land. And he could have built it anywhere at all, but he chose that one particular spot.
Probably just out of spite, being like...
Yeah, I think it's this was the Enlightenment era. So this was like the age of reason, the philosophical movement of, you know, we don't believe in God, we don't believe in, you know, organized religion, and it was kind of hitting back against that. That's what people generally think about Conley's motives in it. The Dublin Hellfire Club was then founded in 1737, so about a decade after William Conley died. And it was really nothing to do with William Conley himself. He wasn't a member. He wasn't associated with the Hellfire Club. They founded themselves in a pub in Temple Bar in Dublin city centre, which is actually the same founding place for the United Irishmen. It's now a Quakers Hall in Temple Bar. And it was founded by a man by the name of Richard Parsons. He was the Grand Master of the Freemasons in Dublin.
Okay.
And he founded the Hellfire Club. He is known for writing a book called Dionysus Rising. Now, Dionysus was the Greek god of fertility and festivity and orgies and everything else like that, right?
Yeah.
And he loved this idea as part of a man of the Enlightenment himself. And this is where the whole thing of devil worship really comes into the idea of the Hellfire Club, is that blasphemy was a significant thing at the time amongst those upper echelons of society in wealthy Dublin, because it was the Enlightenment era. People were looking to hit back against organized religion, and one of the things that some people would dabble in was just intentionally being blasphemous.
So it wasn't even necessarily being like, oh, let's go up here and have a proper sophisticated mass, like a ritual for the devil. It was more just going up, let's shit on whatever religion we decide today.
Well, that's the thing that people ultimately don't really know. You know, we don't know what the actual motives were. But if you look at what Richard Parsons said, what he wrote, he was a militant atheist, effectively. You know, he was opposed to organized religion and the idea of there being a God. And part of the aspect of that was to overindulge, basically look at all the sins, the 10 commandments, try and break as many as you can, that kind of thing, you know. That was just the lifestyle. But the other member that I think is quite important of the Hellfire Club, so Richard Parsons founded the Hellfire Club. The other member I think is quite important is James Worsdale. James Worsdale is the only member of the Hellfire Club that isn't a nobleman, doesn't have a title. He isn't an MP or a lord or anything like that. He's just Mr. James Worsdale. And he was an artist, not a very good artist. He's generally referred to as a con man, a fraud. He made his money from gambling, and he was over and back between London and Dublin quite a bit. He's not listed as a member of the English Hellfire Club, but it's generally thought that he might be the link between the two in the 1730s. So the club, as I said, was founded in 1737. The other member that I think is important to discuss is a man named Henry Ponsonby. Now, he was an MP, a member of Parliament, for an area called Fettered, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was a constituency in Wexford. Now, he lived in Fettered Castle, which was the next building up from Loftus Hall, in Wexford. His sister, Anne Ponsonby, married into the Loftus family, and his sister's granddaughter is Anne Tottenham. Anne Tottenham, who allegedly had an affair with the devil in Loftus Hall. So that's a second connection between the Loftus family and the Hellfire Club. The other member that I think is quite important of the Dublin Hellfire Club is Henry Barry. He was Lord Santry. He was the Lord of Santry in North Dublin. He was a member of the House of Lords, the Irish House of Lords, and he is on record as being known to have killed 2 people. He didn't do it in the line of duty or anything. He wasn't a soldier. He murdered 2 people. One of those people, the first murder that is on record, is one of his chairmen. So these people were so rich, they had people to carry them around in a chair. So he had 4 people like this,
like
on their shoulder, carrying
I
them
thought
around.
you meant like one of his
admin.
members of Parliament, like, you know, below him.
No,
An actual chair
a servant,
carriage.
right, that used to carry him around. And he's on record as, there's different accounts of the story, but it's generally thought that either way, this man was soaked with alcohol and lit on fire. And the other members of the Dublin Hellfire Club were present at the time because it was one of their meetings. They would meet, this is before they moved to the Hellfire Club in the Dublin Mountains. They would meet in just off Fishamble Street, which is behind Christchurch. That part of Dublin at the time was called Hell. It was called Hell because one side of the road going into that part of Dublin had a statue of an angel. The other side of the road had a statue of the fallen angel, or Archangel
Lucifer.
Michael.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Lucifer.
Sorry.
Yeah, and the other statue, the statue of the angel, fell over, was done away with. So there was only a statue of Archangel Michael. So people called the area Hell. Right. And that's where they chose to meet. Sometimes they were in a tavern on that street, and that's where this murder took place.
If I think I'm right, because I was reading about this area for another topic. So this area was obviously called Hell, but it was like a fucking, like, just another like heathenist place, right? Like, it was full of brothels and like that, like just nasty taverns and stuff. So what were all these like people who were obviously hugely wealthy, like, you know what I mean, that they had people carrying them around on fucking chairs?
Exactly.
What were they doing meeting here? Like,
yeah, Sarah's going to touch on that later as well.
Okay.
I suspect it's because they could get away with whatever they wanted.
Yeah, it's kind of like the tunnels of Edinburgh. It's like, yes, all the criminal people will go there, and that's like the prime time place, the like perfect place to get away with things that you wouldn't want other people to see. And
so this is probably where like James Warsdale, am I saying that right? James Warsdale, he probably came into play here, like being the link between the, say, like the underground and the High and Mighty. That's really fucking cool.
Yeah. One of the accounts of that story also is that he poured alcohol of some kind into this man's throat until he couldn't swallow anymore, so it literally filled up inside him, and then they lit the fire from the inside out. That's one of the accounts as well. So pretty gruesome, and it was just for fun as well. The second murder that's on record, and this was quite a high profile case at the time, was the murder of a man by the name of Lachlan Murphy. So Henry Barry was with some friends drinking in a tavern in Palmerston in Dublin. At the time, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was a really rural area in West Dublin. and he was in a duel with a man, and this man ran away from the duel, and Henry Barry ran after him. Kind of Benny Hill style, right? And he ran after him into the back room of this tavern, and he couldn't find the man, so he stabbed the first person he saw with his sword.
Jesus.
The man he stabbed was an employee of the tavern. He was a worker there, and he killed him on the spot. He threw some money at the person who owned the tavern, and he left. He went on the run, and he was later caught and arrested. At the time, he was a member of the House of Lords, but he was charged with murder, and there was a trial before the House of Lords, and he was sentenced to death. So he's the only peer. Peer is Lord or member of the House of Lords to ever be sentenced to death in either Ireland or England.
Wow.
It was remitted. He didn't have to serve his time. He wasn't killed by the state. He essentially, what happened was the judges or the lords that oversaw the trial immediately turned around and petitioned the king to save this man's life. One of the stories about it potentially is that his uncle owned land in a part of Dublin where a river came in, and it was quite an important river for water supply. His uncle had threatened to block the river so that he'd turn off the water supply to Dublin effectively, if they didn't remit the sentence. And that's just, I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but that's just one of the stories that are said about Henry Barry. So all four of those people were members of the Dublin Hellfire Club. They hung out, gambled, whatever it was that they were doing on the top of Montpelier Hill, with where all these legends and myths have come out of, that the devil showed up to play a game of cards. All of these legends came out of these four people and their friends. There seems to be a gap in the historical record from there on, but in 1784 it picks up again. So we're talking about 40 years later, different generation. And here some high profile people are associated with the Hellfire Club again. It's felt that they no longer met in the building at the top of Montpelier Hill, and they moved down the bottom of the hill to the Stewart's house, which is a small house at the foot of the hill,
which is now like a tea room and a cafe.
Unfortunately, it's just closed down, actually.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Unfortunately,
when did it close down?
They've been closed since the beginning of the pandemic, and they just unfortunately haven't.
Just can't keep it. That sucks.
Yeah. That's been happening a lot.
Yeah. Now, one of the members at that time was a man named Thomas Buck Whaley. You might have heard the name Buck Whaley. He was a famous adventurer, traveler, go all over the world. At the time, people couldn't really go much further than their own immediate area, but this guy managed to get to Jerusalem and further afield.
Wow.
And wrote books about his adventures that are quite popular. Another person who's alleged to have been a member is James Napper Tandy. Both Buck Whaley and Napper Tandy have pubs named after them in Dublin.
That's what I was thinking. I definitely recognize the Napper Tandy, all right.
Yeah. And then Napper Tandy, he was the lawyer for the United Irishmen. So after the rebellion in 1798, he represented the United Irishmen at trial. And his daughter would start a relationship with Robert Emmet. Robert Emmet, who was another Republican revolutionary, was killed by the British Army after a failed revolution in 1803. So these are quite well-known characters who, in the 1780s, were alleged to have been part of the Hellfire Club. And it's at that time where one of the stories about a daughter of a local farmer going missing emerges as well. So it's believed that potentially she was present at a meeting of the Dublin Hellfire Club and lost her life as a result.
Right. So regardless of whether this was
like let's just say, for the sake of this right now, that she was taken to the Hellfire Club and she never made it back out, regardless of whether this was in some, satanic ritual, quote, or whether it was just a load of rich douchebags having
Yeah.
their way and doing whatever, and then maybe they took it
Yeah.
too far. Regardless, it's still
Pretty sick.
involving murders
Yeah.
up in this house, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's like what Carl said. It's like the main idea was just to intentionally
Do
break
whatever the fuck you want.
commandments and
Mhm.
do all this sort of shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is kind of funny because it's like, let's oppose religion by being the exact opposite of what religion tells us not to do. So you're actually still following a guideline.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Fucking
Yeah.
stupid. It's so
Yeah.
dumb.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And they try and out each other, I imagine, like, I'm more gruesome fucker than you are. Like,
Yeah.
And so another thing, like, because I'm just kind of obsessed with this idea of modern government being just a bunch of pedophilic reptiles.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was a lot of that kind of carry on as well in this, like, where, well, you're of whatever status and I saw you with this child or doing whatever you're doing. It's like, yeah, I also had relations with the child, but I'm going to tell them first if you know what I mean? So a lot of that is still going on today, right? Like,
yeah. Well, the rich and powerful tend to just get away with things. I think this is a classic example.
I mean, they have
of
their
that
own
in
fucking
history.
island to go do dumb, gross shit.
So it's like essentially like an Illuminati type club.
Yeah.
Just 300 years ago.
And local.
Well, yeah, when you think, I mean, I don't want to get into, there is a lot of conspiracy around it, but
yeah.
I mean, if the founding member is the Grand Master of the Freemasons, if the land was previously owned by the founding member of the English Hellfire Club, and there's multiple connections there as well, and then if there's connections with the Loftus family and Loftus Hall, and the Speaker of the House of Commons, some really big names. You do wonder, was there anything else there? You know what I mean? Is this organized, and how deep did it go? Who else was involved? Because they don't keep records. There's no records of these.
Or you know what? Not. Like maybe all these things that they were like supposed to like real scandalous things that they were doing were just really smoke screens to sort of cover up like truly devious things and connections that were going on.
Oh yeah, I mean? Like weird trade deals and stuff going on, like how they were just fucking over the locals, but the locals are so busy talking about
like oh, did you hear about the devil going to you know what I'm saying, like which is basically what happens now in media. It's like, oh, let's sensationalize
one thing and
let's sensationalize or like let's I guess fill like society's eyes with like something stupid and irrelevant, and so that we can cover up what
there's
like an actual
oil spill,
like that, or like what the actual government, which is not really the government that we see, it's like what they're doing.
Yeah. So what, like, basically, at what point does it stop being a boys' club and does it start like affecting the masses? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting actually, because I do think it was kind of that idea might have been inverted in the later incarnation of the Hellfire Club in the 1780s, where there was a brewing revolutionary movement starting in Dublin at the time, and the association of being a part of the club was thrown at Napper Tandy in some journalistic piece. And at Buck Whaley, because they started talking about things about giving more rights to the Catholic population of Ireland, and about greater redistribution of wealth and more democratic powers for Ireland and freedom from Britain and these kind of questions. And there was an attempt to dirty their names by saying, well, these guys are members of the Hellfire Club, they're charlatans,
right.
and all this kind of thing. So it was an attempt to discredit them, but it was kind of a conspiracy in the opposite way. They were saying, well, look at all the revolutionary activity that is taking place in these circles, as a way to entirely discredit them, as opposed to look at all the in the earlier incarnation, look at the rich and powerful getting together,
no spotlight
shone on them to show that, but if there was proper journalists around in the 1720s,
Yeah, maybe.
1730s, maybe that might have happened. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Well, that was.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm very impressed, Carol.
Good job,
Like
Carl.
seriously, like not for the podcast. Like that was actually really. Okay, guys, that's what Carl had to say about what he's learned about the Hellfire Club in recent history. Anyway, one thing I will say as well, if you're getting confused as to why people keep using the name Lynchy, that's what my friends have called me for years and years and years. So Lynchy is Adam. Don't panic. Anyway, moving on, we're going to hear from Sarah next. And she's going to fill us in on just more of the general deeds of the Hellfire Club members themselves. And yeah, so let's get stuck in.
My kind of stuff is what the Hellfire Club were apparently up to. So I found some kind of online accounts, not online, they were articles and stuff, but I found them online since then. So one of the articles I found was in a broadsheet, and it was entitled "An Ample Discovery of the Damnable Cable, commonly known as the name of the Hellfire Club." So this letter was purporting to be from a member of the Hellfire Club called Moloch or Morlock, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And basically this article was portraying the club as, and I quote, "a diabolical cable of sexual excess and deviancy." Okay, so this was published in 1737 or 1738, one of those years.
So that was right at the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting. So apparently it's giving the initiation procedure for the Hellfire Club.
Oh.
Which is pretty interesting. So the procedure was overseen by Pluto, or the Grand Master of the club, whoever that was. Carl filled us in on that. And before becoming a member, you'd have to swear an oath to Pluto as well. So what they had to say was, "I promise to abandon all that is called good by silly priesthood fools, and also let nothing share the least part of my favour, but what is solely urged by my most vicious and lascivious desires." So basically, it's all just gone back to this idea of their sexual desires, and kind of that's what the Hellfire Club was. It was just, sexual deviancy and doing whatever we want, crime, all the fun stuff thrown in.
Yeah, because not to just throw names at it or anything randomly, but it does sound an awful lot like, say, Aleister Crowley's beliefs and his behavior as well. Like, I'm gonna have to look up what years he was active. I know it was well after this, but
but that's what I've always viewed it as myself. It's like kind of an early version of that, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Because it was about rejecting the church and nothing to do with religion. They're all atheists. So we actually found out that there was another club at the same time, and it was all to do with kind of Greek and Roman history, art, architecture, and most of the members in the Hellfire Club were also members of this club as well. So it's kind of like the precursor to the Hellfire Club, or more of a friendly face.
Because another thing that's interesting, because that's what I was thinking with the name Pluto, and then
Dionysus,
Dionysus, and then I was only reading an article actually about the Ku Klux Klan yesterday or the day before, and they theorize now. I don't know how intelligent any of these people are in that, but the name Ku Klux came from the Greek like Kuklus or Koklus or something like that, which just literally meant circle. And the author, in fairness to him, did say, like, regardless of how intelligent these founding fathers were of the KKK, like, just look at every other kind of brotherhood, like fraternity in the States in particular, and the first thing they do is put like Alpha Pi Omega.
Oh yeah.
So like this all kind of there is that like correlation, I guess. Sorry, Sarah, go on.
Yeah, so basically this article was also saying that when you become a member, like after that initiation procedure, you immediately get all your boundaryless wishes and desires as well. And again, that goes back to the whole idea of it was just a weird sex club as well. So I found out some of the activities that were apparently going on as well.
such as sacrificing a maid. Now, this can be taken either way. So it's again going back to, well, did they commit murder? Because Carl said that there was it a farmer's daughter apparently went missing.
Yeah.
But the other way you can view this idea of sacrificing a maid could be taking of virginity, if you want to look at it in that light.
Right.
Also, apparently, one of the activities was the admission of a molly. Now, a molly was actually an effeminate man or a homosexual man.
Okay.
So again, this is going back to the kind of sexual deviancy.
Wait. So they would do what now with Molly?
It just said that they'd kind of include him in the club.
So
And
they're like,
what they do, so now they could be riding him, they could be murdering him. Who knows?
but he was,
Or both.
but they, Mollies
Mollies.
were allowed in though. That's what they're saying. Like there's.
No, they'd find a molly and bring them in.
Yeah.
Oh.
They were
It
not
doesn't
like
say that they'd
official
be
members.
long-term members, so it could just be a
Like tools. They
viewer as
were
a fun
basically
type thing.
tools. Yeah.
Wow.
So like, okay, so you had mentioned that as soon as they were initiated, that they like their wishes would come true. So would that mean like the agenda of the next meeting was like, okay, Larry, what are all the things that you've always wanted to do? Okay, guys, we're all gonna do what Larry's always wanted to do. Or is it just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, was it tailor made for these new people?
So it could be anything from like, I really, really want a balloon party
Yeah.
to get me a small brown boy.
Yeah, like
with
I've
no
always
hair.
wanted to try, couscous.
Yeah.
Everybody, let's cook couscous.
No, well, it doesn't specifically say that, but in my mind, that's what it could be. So
Yeah,
Okay.
it definitely sounds like though. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's cool.
My wife never lets me have
Everyone.
couscous.
we're a pretty open club. You can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Another part of it references female acquaintances. Now, they're kind of alluding to the fact that they were sex workers or upper class women that they just kind of encouraged into the club for a little while and then pushed them back out after they're used.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. But if you look at where the Hellfire Club in the early days, was it Eagle Tavern?
The Eagle Tavern.
The Eagle Tavern. That wasn't too far from Smock Alley, which is where all the brothels were in Dublin at the time.
Okay.
So it would kind of make sense for, the activity to be quite close to that location. But yeah, so they also said that like upper class women, even though it was generally a no-go area, to Hellfire Club, they were, and I quote, fair game.
That was a term they used.
That was a term they used. I
Fair
didn't
game.
realize that was a term back then, but they were fair game. And
Amazing.
also there was a lot of violence, which we knew anyway. But so the members engaged in violent activity, especially Lord Santry. Lord Santry was noted as being prone to sudden and unpredictable acts of aggression. So he was the lad who apparently filled the other lad up with whiskey and set him on fire.
This
And
is
there's an account
Henry
of this
Barry.
as well, that they were just watching him burn and he was just like, crying out in pain.
Fuck.
That was Lord Santry.
Mm-hmm.
And Santry is also said to have put a notch on his pistol to mark each deed of blood that he carried out. And he also bribed witnesses so that it never went any further. But apparently this is something that happened on the regular. Like this lad would just go on absolute benders, raping, pillaging, shooting everyone. That was his thing.
And then he'd just throw a big ball of money and walk
he'd
out.
get away
Make
with
it
it.
go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then generally it was just kind of seen as a social protest against a conservative and highly controlled social environment that prevailed in the 18th century. So it was all, again, just kind of rebelling against the church and against the government, even though a lot of these members would have had links to government if we're not in it.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Which
probably
is interesting.
the church as well, seeing as they were both like hand in hand back then, right? But,
Yeah.
I mean,
And I found another interesting point, that the lad who owned the Hellfire Club, like on Montpelier Hill itself, so that building, so after Connolly, Charles Cobb owned the Hellfire Club building, and he was the son of the Archbishop of Dublin.
which would have
Now, he
been
was
the
actually the
Protestant
only-
Archbishop, right?
Sorry?
The Protestant Archbishop. So him being
It would
the
have been at the
son-
time, yeah.
Right, so that wasn't like any outside like affairs or anything. They're allowed to get married.
No, that was the thing. This is all above board.
Oh,
How
okay,
this got to the
okay.
point. And interestingly enough as well, Charles Cobb is the only recorded death on Montpelier Hill. and that was in 1751. Now, there's kind of mixed reports on how he died. Some people are saying it was of a fever, other people are saying he was shot, but it's kind of left all open-ended as well. So.
And so did he actually live up there as well, like in the building, or separate?
He lived up there in the building, and after his death, that's when it went to ruin. So that was in 1751.
Right, so really and truly it wasn't active as the Hellfire Club for very long then.
No, not really.
And then it fell to shite. So it was
just kind of petered out, yeah.
So built in 1725, and what, by 1751?
Yeah, it was just kind of left to itself.
And like, so what's interesting, well, to me, what's interesting about that, like at this time, like other major Irish hotels, even like that are still standing today, like for example, the Killiney Castle, that big one in Sallynoggin, what's the name, or Stillorgan rather?
Montrose.
The Montrose, yeah. Like those buildings were almost as they are now and functioning in these years. Like I think Killiney Castle was like 1744 or something that was built. So like, what did this place look like even back then? You know what I mean? It was hardly like a fucking palace that all these high and mighties were going up there for their, you know, boning or whatever it was they were doing up there. You know? So
well, it's what I think is also interesting is that after that, the 1750s, when it kind of fell to ruin, there's reports that people went up to take things from the Hellfire Club because there was still nice tiling, nice stained glass, you know, there was things inside the place, furniture, and there's reports that people from the local area took those things and brought them to their own homes to furnish their own houses. And there was another building built down the hill called Carty's Castle. It was called Dollymount Lodge at the time, and that was built by Henry Loftus in the 1770s. And it said that a lot of the interiors from the Hellfire Club was used to build that as well. You know, so it's interesting
that was actually by one of the Loftuses again.
Yeah,
it's like all that is still going on.
Like they have their hands in so many pies.
Yeah, like that's.
Well, the land went straight back to them in the 1760s. So it's just a really small window of time that it went from Philip Wharton from the English Hellfire Club for like a year to William Connolly, who died a few years later in a really young age, to his wife, who just held it on trust. You know, she had no involvement at all.
Yeah.
But it was her that signed the lease apparently with the Hellfire Club when they took out a lease on the building. You know.
So that's really, and then so it just spent 250 years just sitting there looking ominous and growing all these horrible stories, like like now it's like kind of still a place of, I wouldn't say debauchery, but it's almost like an anything goes place. Like kids go up there for parties, assholes like us go up there to go ghost hunting.
I can't imagine a party there. That's crazy.
Yeah, or like, you know, it's also just a nice place to take your kids on a Sunday afternoon because there's a killer view of Dublin City, like, and it's like, why is it still there though after all these years? You know what I mean? Why wasn't it torn down? Why is it being kind of preserved now? Like,
yeah,
I think it's because people were afraid, because all of these kind of myths and legends were around even back then. Like the time the Hellfire Club, there was always those rumors, oh, the devil appeared there, and there was a fire in that building, and people always related it to that story. So I think for the most part, because of those stories and the fear people had, they stayed away, and that's what preserved it. Which
I'm sure was like, you know, done intentionally by the people at the time as well. Like, oh, don't go up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What goes on in that house? But like, or don't look that way when you're crossing the street, or you know what I mean? Like shit like that. And then for me as well, like, so we've all had experiences up there that were definitely couldn't be explained by us anyway, paranormal or not. So it was still built with this old passage grave material. So like it has to harbor some sort of ominous energy. Like I'm thinking at this stage, is it a gigantic, like what's the word, tulpa?
What is that?
Like Slenderman, basically.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like something that's just been created out of nothing, but now is an actual real thing that people are afraid of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like when you think about it, like
So do you think that's what's preserving it now?
Yeah, like almost like, well, that was a good point, like that Sarah made. Like, yeah, people are just afraid of it, or were anyway. Whereas now, it is just a local hotspot, and it's a place to go and have a nice picnic.
I wonder if there have been people who are like, you know what? Well, who owns the land now?
It's public. It's public land.
Yes.
So like, can anyone
people.
buy it? Like if someone
No,
to buy
you can't buy.
No, it'd be like Kickerillo Park, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So is that why no one will, or like?
Well, now, yeah, like, so the government maintain it and make sure that it's safe because so
Okay.
many people go up there. Like,
Oh, I
like
see.
I often see like posts on Instagram from like people that I've worked with, and they're just over at the Hellfire Club on a Sunday, and it's just to give their kids something to do, like their
Yeah.
infant children, like
Yeah.
take them out for a bit of fresh air or whatever.
Yeah, it is a nice wooded park. You know, it's a lovely open wooded area up a hill.
It's an easy hike.
It's an easy hike. People go exercising up there, and there's lots of deer around and stuff. And then just at the top, there's this clearing, and it's just this mad looking
Really
building.
ominous.
Where people like to go to do satanic rituals at the weekend.
That's the you know.
Yeah.
And like, even if it's not necessarily satanic rituals, it's definitely like a place where teenagers can go and drink and not get in trouble with their parents or do whatever. I don't think I've ever been in there and there's not like evidence of some sort of fire within it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just people burning their rubbish or anything like. But yeah, I think that's definitely like, basically what I'm saying is, do you think all the negative energy that was put on the place, like subconsciously, has now created this almost entity that is the Hellfire Club? Like, you know, 270 years later, intentions, like, it's just, and now whatever is in there is just a result of this now.
Or as we were saying, it could be something from the cairn that was on that spot that Amy was talking about. Because that's what a lot of people actually thought at the time of the Hellfire Club, was the devil appeared, not because of what they were doing there. That just kind of added fuel to the fire. Apparently the devil arrived there because he wasn't happy with the cairn being
disturbed in the first
place.
place.
So it's interesting that even back then, that's what people thought.
So that was Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah and Carol as well. And like, this only really occurred to me as we were having this interview. Tulpas just kind of popped into my head. My understanding of a tulpa, I think one of the definitions is a thought form energy ghost. Okay. You have an actual definition there though, right?
Yeah, it's an entity, you know?
Yes.
Why are you laughing?
And you just seem really salty.
Sometimes I can't control my sass. So my understanding is that a tulpa is an entity that has its own thoughts and emotions. Think of an independent imaginary friend. Only you can see or hear, and you've conjured it up. Well, I mean, I use the term imaginary friend very loosely.
Yeah. And like, for me, the only reason why I even know about this is because of the Slender Man killings. Okay, remember the attempted Slender Man killings. Remember the two little girls took their friend into the woods, and stabbed them. So the theory behind this is, like, obviously we all know Slender Man's not real. We know the person who created it, and like, he made the picture for a competition, a Photoshop competition, like years ago, and made up this little story to go with it. But from then on, this story grew and grew and grew, and kids were genuinely afraid of it. And at what point does it become, a fairy tale or a myth to, oh shit, maybe, and then
I can see that. I mean, people, that's a whole thing about manifesting. These are things that you manifest. A tulpa is something that you manifest.
Exactly. And like, so what they say is Slenderman now this like thought form energy ghost tulpa because he kind of, in a way, did cause those two young girls who were so young at this stage to have been manipulated by the fear,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or one of them maybe used that to
Yeah.
manipulate the other, blah, blah, blah. But is this a similar story now with the Hellfire Club? Was it just a regular, like, fucking building on top of the hill that just these stories of fucking debauchery and mayhem and murder,
Yeah.
and like did those stories grow bigger and bigger and bigger?
I mean, I personally think that that place is just a black hole of just negative energy, you know? And I think anything under the umbrella of negative, like thoughts and emotions or ideas, whatever, I think those kinds of things can get to any person, can plant themselves into any person in their weakest state, you know, or just a weak-minded person in general, and it will fester there and it will grow into something that would make the human that it's inhabited do and say just ugly things. They, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost like these things possess you and make you release more negativity into this world. It's almost like
Like a rolling stone,
like you have now become the factory in which to put out more bad things into the world. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. So
And I think that's what this place is.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that when I said, do you think that this is a tulpa now, I think, like, or maybe whatever is in it
Yeah,
has been
absolutely.
created
Yeah,
because
I
of
think
just,
so. It just like spreads its little black tentacles into anybody who will bite
exactly,
and brings them in.
and now it's just growing bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's likely. Mm-hmm.
And now we're gonna spread that fear and negativity even more by telling you guys what happened us when we went up there. So enjoy. Secondary school or high school, and I had never been up there, like, and through the scouts and stuff like that, we had gone camping close by because the scout camp site is like the next hill over or something. Like, it's really close. So anyway, I'd never actually gotten there, but I'd heard all of these mad legends and stuff. And then, so I had moved away, and when I came back, we all kind of became really close friends again, and started going up the Hellfire Club, like, just like we were doing it like after work and stuff, right? Like, just for something to do.
Yeah, it was
And
always
then,
just things like
yeah,
after work, hey, do you want to go to Hellfire Club? Yeah, come on, let's go.
yeah, because it is a nice walk, and it's like enough spooky to get your adrenaline going while still being moderately safe. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like you're more afraid of, oh shit, like maybe there's
A group of teenagers.
yeah, like maybe there's like a group of
Neat
kids up
place.
here, like, yeah, up to no good, or like just undesirables or whatever. Like, am I gonna get robbed when I get here,
Mm-hmm.
or is it gonna be safe?
I didn't know it was a real place because the only time that I've ever heard the name Hellfire Club
Mm-hmm.
was when I was reading Marvel comics.
Oh yeah.
And then they were like, oh no, it's a real place. I'm like, or a real club. Like, what? Like, that's crazy.
Oh yeah,
like, do they have
in
superpowers?
it. I mean, they basically did sexual superpowers. But anyway, so we started going up. Like, I remember one night my two little sisters were with us and stuff, and we were just dicking around with that stupid app that I had downloaded, that we spoke about in the Edinburgh episode. So that's a good timeline. This was all going on in and around that time. And then, so the first night we went up, I remember we got, like, you know, random fucking words. And again, I think this app was designed by like some dude from like Finland or something. So it has like a really small word bank. But one of the words that we got was like Mustang, remember? And we were like, how dumb is that? Like, talking about a car, blah, blah, blah. But it was like small things that we had just been talking about, like, oh, is this room a stable that we're in? And then it brings up the word Mustang instead of horse, blah, blah, blah. And again, nothing really happened while we were there that first time. It was just enough to scare my two little sisters and stuff. So then we bought a
small digital recorder to do some EVP work and go back up and play Zach Bagans. And we were up there for a good time that night, right?
That was the longest session we did. I think it was probably about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, easily. And so what we did was made sure the coast was clear, i.e. made sure there's no delinquents hanging around or whatever, and went in and did just really long EVP sessions. Like, we weren't doing like those little bursts or anything. We weren't trying to listen back. And I can't remember. Oh, no, sorry, I do remember. So we would go into one room, do a really long session, stop, go down. We weren't actually getting anything like tangible happening to us that night as far as we could hear or anything. And then we were in the bottom room and we had a pendulum and stuff. Sarah was the only one that was getting any sort of reaction from our pendulum. And so we were asking questions or whatever, like, you know, were you a woman? And it was saying yes and blah, blah, blah. And as we're standing there, I see what looks like the shadow of a black cat, big old black cat. And in the recording, you can hear me go like, shush, 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 shush. Like, Carl, shut the fuck up or something. Like, and I was like, there's a fucking cat. And I was trying to like get my shit that I had in my hands together so as I could jump out through this window, which is at ground level. Like, I wasn't doing any like Tom Cruise shit or anything. But like, this was a cat. And it was as if when it looked around the corner and saw that I had recognized that it was there, it backed off just the way a regular cat would do. So I jump out the window. I'm looking around and obviously I don't see a cat. But what I do find is this black garbage bag that has been like trampled into the weeds just outside. So I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, it was this. It had to have been this. And then I like pulled it out of the weeds or whatever. And we were all laughing and it was like, oh, that was, you know, funny shit, whatever. But then when we got back, I was like, hold on a minute. That garbage bag wasn't making any noise. It didn't blow in the wind. It didn't do anything. Like, I had to physically...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you pulled it out.
Yeah, I had to like remove it from where it was. And as soon as I did that, you know, we went back in and we tried to start up again. And all we could hear was this fucking bag blowing in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think what's also interesting about that, and I don't know if we've talked about it, but there's also the other kind of legend or myth that about the Killikee cat.
Mm-hmm.
That it was a cat that was near the Hellfire Club. They poured whiskey on it, set it on fire, thing died. But apparently people have been seeing a giant black cat in the area with like glowing eyes, and there's even a portrait of it in the Stewart's house, which is the building at the bottom of Montpelier Hill. And apparently if you turn that upside down, it invokes this spirit of the cat. And yeah, I just found it quite interesting at the time that happened.
Yeah, and I like me being, I do try and say like, no, it wasn't this. And I really was trying to be like, no, it was just a black bag. But the more I thought about it afterwards, the more I was like, I know what a fucking cat looks like. You know what I mean? But I was also concerned, like, you know, I did know that there was this legend of the Killikee cat. Wasn't necessarily at the top of my mind at the time or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I think about it, and even now, I am convinced maybe it was a real cat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
that's the thing, you see, like I was thinking that too, but there's no houses for a long time up there, like a long way away up there. It's really is isolated in the middle of nowhere, and there's nowhere for feral cats to go because they're not going to get their hands on any rubbish or anything like that. It's not where, and we don't have wild cats in the Dublin Mountains.
Yeah.
So you
No,
know,
I've lived in the area my whole life, and I've never seen a cat up there. You know,
if you saw a cat up there, you'd think that somebody brought it there. You know, that's
just taking a cat for a walk in the middle of the night.
yeah.
But yeah, so the more I think about it now, I'm like, okay, maybe that was whatever this energy is up there giving us the response that we were poking at it for.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we go home and we review all of that footage. And again, it was like, I want to say November at this stage, October, November.
about October, yeah.
Yeah, so it was getting dark out early. So I'd get home and I was sitting in my other sitting room in my parents' house listening to this. like all the curtains closed and it was dark and shit. And we got so much, like, what I would consider and what Zach Bagans would definitely call a Class A EVP. But the one thing I will say is, like, all very faint. Like, we were hearing what sounded like people in the background, people whispering really up close. Because one of the things you would do would leave the recorder running in the other room while we were conducting our little experiments in the next room over or whatever. And we heard, the one that sticks out to me was just someone, and it just sounded like they said, like, we want you, or we want to, or so, you know what I mean? Something like that. And then like, we got tons of, you know, because the place is constantly dripping from with condensation and stuff. And we were like, oh God, is this, you know, just a puddle, or is this, because one of them blatantly sounded like the word kill. But when you said maybe it's just water dripping, you're like, oh, I can hear that too. You know what I mean? So anyway, that was the first night.
So did anything happen to y'all at home after your investigation, or that first one?
After that first one, I don't think so. Not in my house anyway.
No, you guys?
No.
No, and I will.
No, not that time. No.
Yeah, and I will say as well, like, I think I'm very closed off.
Yeah.
To a lot of this stuff or whatever. Like I'm not a fucking medium or anything. Like, I'm not a sensitive or anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, a couple of months later, we go back, and this time it was January, because I was only looking at the pictures in my phone, because I'm gonna have to try and put up some pictures of it. And this time we go back with Amy, and same thing again. This time we get there actually is a couple up there, two like kids that are obviously, you know, thinking, let's go up here and do whatever we want.
Neck.
Yeah. But then when they see this group of in and around 30-year-old weirdos hanging around at the rock, and we said hello, like,
come up here and do jogging.
yeah. So they were like, we're not about this. So yeah, anyway, once they cleared off, we went in to make sure that there was no one else hanging around. And this time it was totally different. The last time we were there, it felt like you were just sitting in someone's sitting room. There was no evil fucking presence or anything like that. It was just completely regular. This time we went in, I think we were all a little on edge and just excited. Anyway, after picking up so much in our like EVP sessions and stuff the last time.
But what happened as well, on the way up, if you remember, we kept on thinking we saw someone behind us with lights. Do you remember? We kept on thinking we saw lights flashing.
Yeah.
Like on the path behind us. So like the path is a winding path, and when we get to one wind, we look down below us to the path below us, and it looked like there was torches flashing, but we couldn't hear anybody. Flashlights. And we'd stop and we'd wait, and then the lights would turn off, and then we'd go again, and it would happen again, you know. And they were like, right, we just need to get up to the top and forget about that. And by the time we got up there, we were just kind of worried and concerned that there was someone following us, and we were kind of a bit pent up a little bit as well, you know. But we got a chance to cool down once we were waiting for those teenagers to
we were able to kind of joke about it and stuff. And I'd forgotten all about that. So we were really like, because again, with this place, it's not like it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's certainly like you're not going to be able to
run. Isolated places.
Dublin. Like you're not going to be able to run to a police station or even another house. Yeah. So if you did get caught up there, you were in the middle of the woods
for a while,
in the middle of the night, with no lights around other than the light from the city. Like,
I think it's worth noting as well that, so obviously we felt we were being followed the whole way up, but then when we were up there, we were on our own. Like no one came up after us. So who or what were we seeing?
Yeah. That was pretty strange. Like,
yeah, I've been up there once, but I don't remember if there's any like streets that you could like or detours that, you know what I'm saying, or is it like just one road up kind of thing?
There is another one, but it would be very unusual if you're going up there that time of night to go down that way, because it literally leads to nothing.
Yeah, that's just like literally the well-beaten track and stuff as well, you know. And the way the path works is it like a regular like mountain road. It's steep, so they've just built it like backing and forwarding on itself. So the higher you go up, the more of the path that you can see below you, which didn't help us being freaked out, you know what I mean? Because the more we got up, the more we were seeing this, and then we weren't seeing this light, and then anyway, we got up there, and yeah, you're right, Sarah. Nobody actually came up.
Mm-hmm.
So
you that makes sense that you guys were on edge, because it's like if you guys are being followed, and then they hide, like say they were there was somebody actually was following you
mm-hmm.
and hid, they obviously didn't have good intentions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so then there's the other side of it is maybe these people walking up kept seeing our torches, our flashlights, and going, who are these guys? You know what I mean? And then we reached
Let's
the top.
turn back.
Yeah, like so. But either way, yeah, we were very on edge from the get-go. And
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I think as well, it was like Amy's first time coming up there.
Yeah.
She had never been.
Oh, and we actually did the cleansing before we went up too.
Yeah, we tried to do everything properly this time.
Yeah.
And kind of protect ourselves, ground ourselves, and all that jazz.
Probably made things worse, but listen.
Maybe. But so anyway, from what I remember, we kind of went in, and the layout of the Hellfire Club, again, it is pretty small. There's kind of the little hallway, a room at the very back that's quite small, and then two large sort of chamber rooms on either side on both floors.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, it ended up being me and Sarah and Carl and Amy went into like the room on either side,
mm-hmm.
checked it out, nobody there, whatever, and then we went upstairs, same thing again. And when we went into the back room, which wasn't a room that we had spent any time in the previous times, I don't think. In fact, I was anyway, like I couldn't remember that room being there.
I remember you saying that at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that as well.
Yeah, I was like, it was just real, silly things like that kept happening. I was like, I don't ever remember this room being here, like whatever. But as soon as we walked in, me and Sarah both heard, like with our own ears, something hissed at us.
Yeah.
Loud and angrily. And it stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, that's a bad sign. Like I don't think we should be here.
Yeah.
And Sarah was like, no, maybe it was, the rocks or something outside or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because we could still hear Carl and Amy.
Did that room in the back that y'all went to have a window in it?
Yeah. And
okay.
So there was sort of a semicircle window at the very back, which is where, like, that corner was where this sound kind of emanated from.
Uh-huh.
And then there's two, what I would call arrow slit windows on either side walls. But we went over and there was nothing there. And like Ireland doesn't have snakes. St. Patrick made sure of that. So it's not like, or there was no cats up there either, which is the only other thing I could think of that would hiss at you like that. So straight away I was like, I think that was the most obvious paranormal thing that has ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Like just this big angry fucking hiss. So of course that's where we started our EVP sessions again or whatever. And again, this is just 4 people standing in the freezing cold, fucking talking to nothing. You know what I mean? But what I remember from that very first session was it constantly sounded like there was somebody in the doorway of the room, because the whole floor of this place is just dirt and stones. So any footstep you make, you hear.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going, like, we were saying, is that just the water dripping or not? And then it became more and more like obvious. It sounded as if someone was standing there trying to see what we were doing almost, or listening into our conversation, or
It got to the point that I stood in the corner of the room that I could see the doorway, because I was convinced there was someone there. So I did not take my eyes off that doorway the whole time we were in that room, because I just couldn't.
It was like someone was shuffling or walking back and forth. It started out with being like, it sounds kind of like there's someone out there, to being like someone is walking around out there,
We weren't getting anything happening to us other than this, but what it made us do then was go out that way where we were hearing these noises coming from and go into the next room and start up in there. And so we did. We started up in there, and now we start hearing these footsteps from the opposite room, the last room upstairs.
Was anybody in that one?
Well, it got to the point where we were saying we need to go and check.
Mm.
So we picked up all our gear and we went into the next room. And then I think it could have been Carl. I can't honestly remember. someone said, it's like it's getting us to follow it. And if that's what it wants, we're giving it exactly what it wants, what it's asking for. So as we say that, we're in this final room upstairs, and again, we're asking more questions, we're hearing more footsteps, and it's a lot more active than it ever was before. And then we start hearing what sounds like a fucking bowling ball. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
It sounded like someone was or picking up a rock.
A rumble.
Yeah, like a rock that wasn't quite perfectly circular, so it would make noise
like
as it's rolling down. Like, yeah, literally like Indiana Jones style shit. But like back and forth, downstairs, underneath us. And so I said to Carl, like, come on, like, we need to go and check this out. Thinking, oh, we're the boys, like, let's go and look at this. And then the two girls were like, well, you're not leaving us here. Like, that's an even
can
more
I just
stupid idea.
Sorry, that was actually myself and you, Lynchy, and then we were like, come on, Carl and Amy.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Carl and Amy, were
those footsteps were clear as well. I was like, there has to be fucking someone walking up those stairs, because it was literally just like anyone going upstairs. Could be like my ma running up to me.
Yeah, but
is that rumble
bowling
noise?
Ball, yeah.
It sounded like someone was moving something.
Like furniture.
Downstairs.
Furniture,
like
yeah.
furniture being moved around.
Like someone taking a rock out of the wall or something, you know?
Yeah, and like for me, again, I will always try to be like, no, it's this or it's that. This is the most fucking out there activity I've ever heard in my life.
What about you guys? What did you guys think whenever y'all heard this going on?
Well, I remember just looking at Amy because she was on the opposite side of the room to me, and I thought it was just me that had heard it, you know. And you're kind of conscious that maybe not everyone was experiencing or hearing the same things, but as soon as I heard it, I saw Amy just go, like, her hands out, her arms
She's
out,
very animated,
and her mouth open, like she didn't say anything. You just like could see her acknowledging the same thing I could, and then we all just went, did you all hear that, you know? And everyone was like, yes, we heard the same thing, you know. It was like, yeah, it was like a big rumble, you know. And we walked out, we went around, we did a lap of the building, and we shone our torches off into the distance. We saw a pair of eyes in the distance, but it was a deer. I remember I was like, you sure it's a deer, you know? Proper panicking, like.
But I'm sorry, one thing I will say as well is right before we left the room to go and make sure, because we were convinced, like, no, this is like a real life fucking human being like down there. As we walked to the doorway, I experienced my first ever cold spot. And like up until now, I just assumed that was like one of those bullshit things that they spoke about in documentaries and movies or whatever. But I remember saying like, oh my God, like, because it was already freezing cold. It was January. This place has no windows or anything. And you stepped into it and it was like, literally felt like stepping into a cold shower. Like that's almost how it felt. But it wasn't like you could put your hand in and be like, oh, look, you can feel a person. It was just one huge cold fucking like lump of air. And I remember saying to everybody like, oh my God, put your hand here. And everybody felt it. And then we went and we did our sort of scouting of the area. And then once we finally got outside, like we were all hyped up. You know, like this was like terrifying. And someone again says, I think it might have been Amy, well, if it wanted us to get out, like it tricked us into it.
Wait a minute. So I thought you guys went to investigate the noise.
We did.
Where was it?
The noise was coming from downstairs. So we ran downstairs to see if this was a person. And there was no one there. So that's when we ran around the building.
Oh, okay.
I think we actually went like opposite ways and met in the middle or something like that.
Like we were so convinced that this was a person because the footsteps were so real.
Yeah.
Like it was a person.
So we get outside and we're all standing. The four of us are standing like in a line, like looking back at the Hellfire Club. Like if it would have made for a really good like album cover.
Yeah.
You know, like just these four shadows. And Carl, you're so eager for us to go back in. You're like, come on, like it's just getting warmed up. And from what I remember, all three of us turned on you, basically.
Yes.
And which...
How'd that feel, Carl?
Nothing new for Carol, unfortunately.
What do you mean when you said that everyone turned on him?
We all started getting
I was
really like
furious.
snarky.
I was actually snapping from the moment we went outside. So like when we were leaving it, I was just like agitated, just like really like the slightest thing Carl was doing, I was like, stop it, stop that. You know, just really getting on my nerves, like properly.
And you turned to me at one stage, Lynchy, and you had this face on you that I hadn't seen on you in like 10 years or more, like this really annoyed face, and you were just like, you're really annoying me, you know. You just said in a real low voice, you're really annoying me, like, and I was like, what did I do? You know?
But but I do think I do remember apologizing though.
You did.
I said like, I'm sorry, Carl, but you're really fucking annoying. But yeah, so that's when we're all standing outside and looking in the fucking windows again and being like, was this a person? I look up into that same window where we had just left and felt that cold spot. And that's where I see just this big black shadow. But it was like a side profile. And I saw a red eye. And it just walked out the door. Like, as if it was going back to the stairs. Oh. And it was like, it was looking at us. It was as if I had caught him, or it, just after it had been standing there staring at us and walking out of the room. I caught him, like, just a glimpse. Interesting. And I remember saying, like, much later on, because I was like, didn't even believe myself. Like, at this stage, I was like, no, like, that couldn't have been. I mean, I was saying, like, in my head, what I remember is basically, like, remember Darth Maul from Star Wars? Yeah. I was like, that's the face I want to keep putting on it. I was like, that's not what I saw. All I saw was just black with this red eye.
Like, after all of y'all were, like, sort of at Carl, right after that is when you looked up and you saw, like, as if someone had been looking down on y'all.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
that's interesting because you see where I'm going.
Yeah.
Where it's like this thing is looking at y'all, making y'all feel this certain way, and then he walks away, and all of a sudden you guys are fine.
Well, I don't know how, like, whether we were all pissed off before, after, or around, but that anger stayed.
Yeah. I was angry till we got back to the house, like till we left.
Yeah.
Wild.
And for me, it didn't last quite as long as that. But the next thing we did was we all went back to the big rock just outside, but it's kind of off, a little bit out of the way. So it was like a neutral ground, like that we would go back to, chill out for a minute. Again, it was freezing cold.
And then didn't you have like a flask with you as well with tea in it, and we were all sharing it?
Brought, but it was so hot. The flask is too good. We couldn't actually fucking drink it.
Oh, I hate it when that happens. Quality cup.
Literally.
I'm angry.
But anyway, so after a while, Carl convinced us, because I was like, I saw this thing and I was like, no, that's it. I get it.
Yeah.
Like, point taken. We're going home.
Yeah.
And Carl convinced us to go back into this two sort of outer rooms. We call them the stables because we're just fucking guessing, basically.
Like, you can't actually get into the main house from them. They're literally like two doorways on the sides of the building.
Yeah.
And
so anyway, we went into the one on the right first, right? And this is where my memory starts to get a bit hazy, because from what I remember, we did have a spirit box.
Yeah.
But again, it was so noisy that we didn't like to have it on in case someone snuck up on us or whatever. Yeah. But we did turn it on and off a few times in that stable. But every time we did, Carl, I remember, you were hearing people in the main building, right?
Yeah, that's right. It felt like there was someone in there, like as in someone got an opportunity to go in after we had left. You know, it's like that we took our eyes off it for, you know, a few seconds, and that meant that somebody had appeared and
it was like
was hanging out. Yeah, it was like maybe 3 people or something, like just walking around talking in the same way that we were, you know.
And I thought I heard the bowling ball noise again. I still thought people were moving stuff in that building, even though there was nothing to move.
Yeah, it just felt like we weren't alone, you know.
Yeah, big time. And I do remember, because this spirit box that we have, again, like, I had taken the antenna off it, and because you're up in the mountains as well, like, literally no interference comes through, like it's just static. But every time Sarah, I think, picked it up, again, like nothing will happen, nothing will work for me. But when Sarah picked it up, I do remember like a split second of what sounded like children.
Yeah, it's just like a small boy.
I forgot about
Yeah.
that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just enough that we all kind of looked at each other, and it was gone again. But something happened, I think, that's literally scared us out of that room again.
I think it was the fact that Amy didn't want to go back in, so she was still standing outside, and I think she started hearing what we were hearing next door in the building. She could hear people talking. So we, as far as I remember, we went out because we thought someone must have got in there at that point.
Mm. And then we checked again. Well, we didn't go into the building, but we could tell nobody was inside. You can see him. Like,
yeah.
And then we went into the other stable then, at the other end.
Yeah.
Anything happened in the other one?
We were,
Yeah.
To us, it felt like nothing was going to happen. You know, it was like we were just there, and
I will say to you, it felt like this.
Yeah, I was not okay with it. Like, Lynchy, you were standing quite close to the door, and I remember saying to you, I want you to get away from that door. And I actually tried to like pull you by the arm away because I just wanted to move you the fuck away for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I did not feel good.
Yeah.
And so this is where like just we started acting particularly strange again, like between snapping at Carl and this weird placement of people in this little room. So this room is not like, it's probably smaller than this bedroom, like. And I was stood at the door, and I remember like turning around and just seeing you literally like hand out trying to put me back in. And I was creepy. And I was saying like but right before you had even done that, I had been thinking in my head, like, this is where I need to stand.
Yeah.
Like, this is my spot. And then when you did that, I said, no, I have to stay here.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
And then
I was like,
Amy
no,
been...
you have to move, you have to come in. I just didn't want you near that door.
And then so Carl was in the opposite corner, and Amy was in the last corner. But she had actually been in halfway up the room and just started saying, oh, I need to stand down here.
Yeah.
In the corner. So we were literally like four corners of this fucking room. I think, Sarah, maybe you were like a little bit further.
I was more kind of in the middle because I was standing really quite close to you because I had you by the arm trying to pull you in. Like, so.
Right. So what happened next?
I started calling out, I think, and I was like, because you were like, look, we're only going to do this for a minute or two, and then we're going, you know. And I think that's probably why I said it felt like nothing more was going to happen because we had decided we were going to leave and we're kind of preparing ourselves to go. And I was like, look, we're just not convinced that there's someone here with us, but please just give us a sign if you are here with us, just so we can be satisfied that we're not alone. And then we just heard like rubbish blowing around outside, and what we thought was rubbish blowing around outside.
I disagree with this statement. There was no wind that
night. No, that's what I'm saying. What we thought was rubbish blowing around outside. But it was a Fanta can, a can of Fanta Orange, a soft drink, made by Coca-Cola.
No, we have Fanta. Fanta is an American thing. It's okay.
Soda can.
Soda.
And
it's the 1950s now.
Yeah,
it was like it came over the wall. There's a wall that is outside the stable room that used to go all the way out, just like up 200 years ago. It used to go all the way out.
It had little steps on it where people would like run up on their horse, and they use little steps to get off their horse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
It was like as if a can got thrown over that wall, or was on top of the wall and got knocked off the wall. And we didn't think anything of it at first because, you know, we just thought the wind blew a can around.
Yeah, but we did get scared though, because we turned and because it was just this noise, and then we all looked and we were like, oh, it's just a can, thank you.
Yeah, God. Exactly. And then we were walking out, we're like, oh God, that can really frightened us. I think it was me that said, but there's no wind. You know, there's absolutely no wind. It's dead quiet. And where did the can come from? You know, because
there was other, that's true, and there was other rubbish around there, like chip packets and stuff like that. But I'm trying to translate.
You mean crisps?
Crisps, sorry. Other garbage around that area, but like that, like light things that should have blown in the wind.
Yeah.
And this can like literally rolled right past them.
Yeah.
And it was just after I had said, please just give us another sign.
And we'll leave.
And we'll leave. Yeah.
I remember you saying that, and we left. We got the fuck out of there.
We did, yeah.
But there was Like we had done a lap of that building inside and out. We did not see that can anywhere. And it wasn't windy. We got outside and realized it was actually probably one of the stillest parts of the night. The wind had just stopped.
Yeah, and because sometimes you can hear like, you'll hear like a motorbike or something drive past on the main road, even though it's a good distance away, but like dead silent. But another thing that I remember is when this Fanta bullshit was happening. The Phantom can, yeah, thank you. As you were walking, because that was me, I was like, no, like, let's just go. So it was me, I think Amy was next to me, and you guys were kind of like lagging behind a little bit. But Sarah, you heard something growl in your ear.
Back into the building because Carl was like, no, there has to be someone here. So Carl went off and was walking around the back of the building again to check. And I was like, I just, for whatever. He was actually didn't find it weird at all. Yeah. He was really calm. The rest of us were really kind of agitated and heightened. So I decided, look, I'll go back into that room just to see for whatever reason. And clear as day, behind my head, another hiss, like the loudest hiss I've heard, to the point that I turned on the spot and ran to Lynchy.
I didn't know what had just happened because I saw Sarah walking. I looked back like that. I looked behind myself and I saw Sarah walking towards me. But then, like that, Sarah just turned 180 and just ran the opposite way. And I was like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" You know, she was like, "Something just hissed in my ear."
Yeah,
you know,
it was in my right ear. It was like just slightly behind me, but just there. And I heard it. It was so loud, like it was loud.
Yeah.
So cool.
So then we all just, I abandoned my idea of doing a recce in the area to see if there was anyone there. We just headed off.
Carl, I actually remember you, because you were so calm and you were like, Sarah, come on, like, don't be silly.
Yeah.
That kind of attitude. You went to go back in and you had your flashlight, which is the one that you use, is a full-on police mag light.
Yeah.
And naturally, that's just the way you hold it, like resting on your shoulder. And you're looking in, and you turn, and all of a sudden you were just like, nope, okay, come on, let's go.
I did. I went to walk back into the stable on the right hand side, the opposite stable, and just before I did, I just had this. The only time that night, really, bar hearing that rumble, I got this really, really bad feeling, and I thought I had seen a shadow at the window at the other end of the stable, you know. And that just made me just want to go, and I just did exactly what Sarah did, and then we all headed down the hill. But then what happened, like a few seconds later, when we got to remember, you know, we were walking down the hill.
Yeah, we got to finally onto the actual track.
Yeah,
that brings it down. Yeah,
and just as we got onto the track, my torch went flying. Do you remember that? My torch just did a full 360 out of my hand, and it hit. You turned around and you were like, were you pulling my jacket? And
I said, because this all happened at the same time, and I actually thought I thought Carl had reached out with his flashlight to like hit my hood, but we were too far apart.
Yeah, I was actually in between you both.
Yeah,
I was about in the middle.
You were on my left hand side up here, and the torch came flying down my right hand side. But you were definitely, there was a Sarah width in between us, like, you know.
Call me fat.
No, you were lying on your face.
You're crawling along like this.
So I don't think the torch actually hit you as it flew out of my hand, but I think you felt something tugging on your jacket, and the torch came unexplained. It wasn't. I still think that it's just not possible for that torch.
So that torch that you had, did it feel like it was getting pulled, or just like kind of, you know how like when someone's holding something, you just walk by it, or maybe it's me because I'm an asshole. Like if someone's carrying something, you just go like this.
Yes. No, it was like that. It was like that. It was like you don't have a proper balance on it. You're holding the far end of it, and someone else grabs the immediate other end of it and knocks it back. Yeah.
And at that same time, I felt what literally felt like someone slapping the back of my hood.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be the same jacket that I had been wearing in Edinburgh when whatever it was in that graveyard, something started pulling on my hood.
Just really loves your jacket.
I mean,
it's a stylish
it's black as the night, so I think it's just, you know. But yeah, so then
we're walking back down that track now. We're a good way down. We weren't near the bottom. We were probably about halfway. Myself and Amy started hearing like party noises up the Hellfire Club, or like screaming. and that made me walk a hell of a lot faster.
We ran. We
got down
the four
so
of us
fucking quick.
almost ran down the hill.
Or what kind of noises?
Like a party noise, or
like a large group of people.
Yeah.
Like,
and screaming as well.
Oh shit!
But I think it was like
weird.
Those woods are strange, and there are said to be weird shit going on in there. Right?
They're supposed to be haunted, not necessarily haunted, but they're supposed to be magic.
Weird energy.
Yeah, energy.
Yeah.
And probably like
Harry
fairy
Potter
shit and all.
What?
Like fairy trees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just weird stuff. But yeah, so then we finally get back down and we're all crammed into Carl's car. And that's when Sarah said, oh, like my side is like really sore. Like my ribs are hurting me. And I was like, you know, all right, check that out when we go home. And you did. You had like the 3 main scratches and then literally what looks like a baby finger, smaller scratch slightly below it. Right?
Yeah. And it was stinging as well. Like it was not sore, but it was just uncomfortable. That's how I noticed it. Yeah.
They were red. Yeah. It was like if it had been any deeper, it would have broken the skin.
Yeah, and again, this was middle of the night, towards the end of January.
And I was wearing 5 layers. No joke, 5 layers of clothes.
And your top layer was a leather jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I had gone, I think, straight from work, so we were all padded up, like, because it was fucking freezing. So
yeah, that's crazy.
But
that's not the first time either that's happened to you, is it?
I've been scratched a few times up there. Once before then, and then I think twice after, because we've been up since. The latest time I had a scratch on my tattoo and it was actually bleeding. It was only when I got home I noticed it, and I thought, oh, maybe I caught it on a branch or something. But I was wearing a hoodie the whole time, like pretty thick hoodie that it wouldn't have gone through. But I keep getting
that in your hoodie. If it scratched you that deep, your hoodie would have been torn.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no mark on it.
So does this ever happen? Like, had it ever happened to you when you were like at home? Like say you hadn't gone for a while, but so it's only connected to when you go over there.
Yeah, like I've never felt anything at home, really. Never experienced anything. It's just when I go up there. But I love going up there to the point that sometimes I get like cravings to go back up. So I'll be like, oh, come on, Carl, let's go. You know, we haven't been in a while. Let's go up.
Yeah.
Because I just really love going up there. Even though it's kind of creepy as well.
You used to go up there by yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, like, and as a kid, like I grew up in the area, so my parents would bring me up. You know, every time I'd have like friends over from different countries, it'd be like, you know what we have to do? We have to go up there. So I'd always bring people up. I love the place. Absolutely love it. But maybe there's an attachment there. I don't know, but I always get scratches.
Yeah, maybe just knows who you are. It's like, oh, look, it's Sarah. Let's scratch her. It's Sarah, everyone.
You see, if you go up there during the day or even early evening or late evening, like once it's not like super late,
dark. I think
once it's not really dark, it doesn't feel weird at all. Like, you know, if there's still, you look down and there's loads of lights on below. You know, you can see lots of cars on the motorway. You know, it doesn't feel strange at all. But then when it's later, like when we went up, it's, you know, then it feels weird.
Well, I always get the sense that you want to look over your shoulder even during the day just to make sure. And like my mother won't go in. Under no circumstances will she go in. She won't go up at night or anything.
All right, well, thanks a million for all the research and all that. You just found a lot more than I would have.
Yeah, it was really good.
It was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed doing it.
Right, guys, go on. Thanks a million.
Time I'd never been there before, and I'd lived like where Sarah lives in Tala for like not half my life, but close enough to it. But still, the Hellfire Club was, you were in school and someone was like, have you ever been up the Hellfire Club? You'd be like, no, not happening. No. So I remember you guys talking to me about it, and like that, very nervous, like spiritually nervous that something would attach itself to me or something like that. But then it was just like, do you know what? No. We're going to do it. We're going to go up and see what it's like. We're going to protect ourselves before we go up. Everything's going to be fine. We got up there. Views are amazing. So I was happy to go with the flow because like that, I was not familiar with the area whatsoever. And trusted you guys to kind of, you know, obviously lead me in and stuff like that and show me where things were and everything. So basically, yeah, it feels weird up there. It feels cold. I don't know, it feels weird. But that could have just been me being just like, I'm nervous or whatever, so that's fine. So yeah, no, we went in, and Sarah seems to attract things up there. So I was happy to stay kind of a bit away from Sarah when we were going into rooms and stuff like that. So it's also trying to be aware that you have to be as quiet as possible when this stuff is going on. And it feels like your senses are heightened. And it's like, I might be able to see as well, but I can hear incredibly well, and it's so quiet up there. Like, it's so quiet. I mean, you look out from the Hellfire Club itself and you see Dublin, and it's one of the most amazing views that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it's so quiet, and it seems to be kind of where we were it would move, if that made sense, like activity wise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You said that it sounded like stones being rolled?
Yeah, literally like a bowling ball or furniture.
I think that's really interesting considering what she was just talking about.
Yeah, actually, I never even put two and two together. Like
the fact that they were taking the stone away and there's also like a rumor that there was a standing stone used over the fireplace.
Which would be the equivalent of like a grave marker, say.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that was used in the fireplace, which would have been in the room below where we heard that. Upstairs. So, like, obviously from an archaeological perspective, it wouldn't make sense that that's where that standing stone would be. I know that you put like two, which we never put together. It was just like, it sounds like furniture been moved down there somewhere instead of what it actually was, stone. No, that's really cool and slightly terrifying, because one thing that always stuck out for me was when we walked outside and we saw the two deer. So we saw the two deer at the edge, and when I looked it up after, like in Irish folklore, like deer are seen as fairy cattle, and they're sent by like kindly people or kindly women. In some cases, she's called the goddess Fliday, and she can shapeshift into the form of a white or red deer, and they're seen as protectors. And when we were walking around after all that real creepy shit happened, there was like two deer just standing there staring at us.
Yeah,
and
because
I was like,
that's what Carl was talking about, was when we were, because after all this noise that started happening, we were like, no, this is a person. We were convinced.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, so we
ran
down.
Someone was messing with us outside.
Yeah, so that's when we kind of did like a little circuit around the building itself, and it was
counterclockwise just for the crack.
Yeah.
Not that we realised, but yeah.
And then that's when Carl shone his flashlight over there, and it scared the shit out of him. Remember, he was saying, but because it was just these eyes looking back at him.
Yeah.
But they were deer.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was after that then we went back, and when we were standing in front of it trying to gather our bearings or whatever, I saw this shadow.
With red eyes.
Just the one red eye. It was like a side profile of his face, whatever. That was enough for me. I was like, no, this is it. Let's go. And then, now I thought Sarah also saw, maybe not a shadow, but something, movement in one of the doors shortly after that. And we were talking about how cranky we all were with Carl. Like we were all.
When are we not cranky with Carl though? I know. Love Carl. No, so I actually remember. Yeah.
And we just started acting strangely. Now
we were so hostile.
There
was like a really hostile energy there that was coming, that was around, like that was us kind of, and it was just it was like, thinking back on it now, it was just like, fucking hell, I was so annoyed, and I have no idea why.
Yeah. And that's when we went into the outer rooms.
Yeah.
And that's when this weird Fanta can.
But there was something else as well. Was there not a stone or something like that? There was like something moved before that. And then we went to the doorway, and then this can, in the dead of night, just rolled across like the front of the doorway where we were. And that's what didn't make any sense, was the fact that it's not pitch black up there. Like, it's lit pollution. From light pollution, exactly. So you're there, you've seen it, and there was no moon out that night either. So it was pretty dark out. And when we saw kind of, like the life of the city and stuff, that's fine. But like, when we were standing in that room and there was like a stone, there's some movement or something, and we turned around and we looked and we were standing there, and then the Coke can just rolled across, and it was just like that had to have been moved by someone.
Yeah, and like we were saying as well, when we heard this noise or whatever, and we're all, because when we were in this room, that's when like our us acting strange really like peaked.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember saying, I need to be stood here by the door. Sarah was trying to pull me back in. You were standing in the opposite corner saying, no, this is where I need to be. All this weird shit.
Yeah.
And then the can happened and we all heard it because there's no other noise. But when we saw the can, we were like, oh, thank God, like it's just a can.
Yeah.
And then
the realization
or someone realized that none of this other rubbish was moving.
There. No.
Or anything like that. So
no.
That was basically it. And then that
so that's what happened. But what did it look like through your eyes, Amy?
Yeah, sorry.
So let's bring it back to when everybody left the vicinity, right? And you guys were just looking back at the building, and you saw the side profile of someone. Did you see anything, Amy?
I thought I did. I looked up, and because like I thought I'd seen something, and then I looked away. I was drawn to it, and then Lynchy was just like, oh, "Fuck!" Like, and he was proper
scared.
Like I don't want to say startled. That's not what it was. Like, it was more of a scare. It was, it was just like, no, done. And like for him to tell me that he's done, and straight away I just felt this kind of like, oh, like horrible feeling. And when we were going back down the hill, we could hear screaming, we could hear shouting.
Yeah, they mentioned that you guys had heard like there was people there, not just one or two people, but like a group of people.
That's it. Yeah, like conversation, kind of like
like party noise.
Yes. So like conversation, people, all that sort of thing.
So I think that's interesting that you guys heard party noise, because weren't these funerals sort of celebrations?
Massive 3-day at least celebrations back then, and you're celebrating someone's life, and it's different.
And still to this day, like there is a saying that like an Irish funeral is the most fun you will ever have. Like,
well, they still carry on that tradition in Louisiana.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing.
They have funeral parades.
Yeah, dancing in the streets, music.
That's really cool. But when it comes to when we were talking about this kind of, energy staying around when horrible things have happened, maybe energy can stay around where joyful things might have happened.
Absolutely.
In this case.
Yeah.
I definitely think so.
We were talking about, I feel like we keep talking about the same thing when we're talking about the stench.
Yeah, the stone tape theory. Dulce calls it the stink. Or the stench.
Or it's like if something stinks so bad, and, you can wash you can clean and wash, but at some point the stench will permeate the walls and the floors and the ceiling. It's just there.
The Hellfire Club as well, because it has such a darkness associated with them, because people obviously took that darkness and ran with it over the centuries. Something has to remain there. They amplified it hugely by continuing and conducting more negativity into the atmosphere that was already there, I think.
Yeah. It's almost like they negated the happiness that once was there.
Yes.
And they tainted it by like the wealthy doing all those things just to spite the Catholic religion.
Yeah.
Or religion, or Protestant religion, whatever, just religion in general. Christianity.
Yeah.
And they tainted it and they turned it into something else. Yeah. Which kind of sucks, because had they never done that, then you could probably go there and have like a positive joy energy high.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Then maybe it would be closer to like Newgrange and stuff, where people still go to this day for that like spiritual connection and that.
That's the thing, and it's like, I think it is a place that people go for a spiritual connection, but not a positive one anymore.
Yeah.
So you still have people, obviously, that are performing negative acts or negative rituals or putting negativity up into the air out there, and it is feeding it, which is probably why when we go up there, we're being outweighed by it, because so much badness has happened up there over the years. Like, that's not even, we can't even imagine what was going on there that hasn't been publicized.
Exactly. And then like another quick thing, like say there's one spirit, like let's just say, for the sake of this, there's one spirit up there. That's his house. That's her house. Whatever. All these people are coming up there and poking and prodding and shouting at it in the middle of the night, and, like, doing all this. It's not going to be happy.
No, like my cat did that the other night. Arthur came up the other night and woke me up at 4 a.m. I was not happy. And he lives in my house.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm in my residence, if I'm here, if I'm in my home that always was, has, and will be, and this gang of 4 people come up and they want to get me on camera and record me and stuff, yeah, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. Come at me, ghost.
Yeah, like, okay, why do they always come and have me put on a show for them?
Yeah.
Why do they want me to shout at them?
And then for us that night, it was like, you know what? They want the show. I'll give it to them.
Yeah, I'll give them a show. I mean, I said I'd never go back.
At this point, I think I finally just, at this point, it seems to me like it's a place that's alive, right?
Yeah.
And it has a memory, obviously, because it remembers all the good and all the bad and all the continuous bad that keeps on coming, but it also remembers the people, I think. And I think that's why, because I think that's why I think it remembers Sarah, because she was mentioning that she used to go up there frequently as a kid, and I think that's why it elicits actions from that place. You know what I'm saying?
Like the fact that she's been marked and stuff.
A lot of sense.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
But like, she's being attacked when she goes up there. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Yeah.
That it remembers
absolutely.
her.
But the thing is, it could be a good thing that it remembers her, because unfortunately, like, maybe she realized it or not, like, she has a connection with that place. And I think you're dead right. Like, from when she was a kid, and you're so much more open, like, psychically, when you are a kid. You're so much more open in many ways when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Like, she's going up there, you know, arms wide open, essentially. She loves the area. I think you hit the nail on the head, Dulce, when you said, like, this place is alive and it has a memory. And I think it should be, like, treated as such. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I think we do a good job of that, and I think we respect it. But there's also a lot of disrespect that goes on up there. So the area could, like, it could be angry as well. Yeah. You know, like, anger and sadness and negativity all feed into each other, into this, like, horrible, like, soup. And then you get Darth Vader. But, like, you could get the Hellfire Club either. But, like, it's all the look of the draw.
Another thing that just real quick before we finish up, like, Sarah and you both remember hearing these party noises and these screams. Me and Carl didn't. And we were all walking down as a group.
Yeah.
You know, stuck together because we were all fucking terrified. And you two were both hearing them, and we couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
We're like, other than just the sounds of.
Could be because we're women.
Well, this is it. Maybe, like, I don't know exactly why, like, maybe it's different frequencies or anything, you know,
or it could be because you and Carl tend to be the skeptics, right? And Amy and Sarah are the ones that are more, I guess, well versed in this kind of
more in tune
thing, more in tune. So it's like, hey, you know, they can see us, you know, like, maybe we can, like, because I'm a firm believer that things can show you what they want to show you, right? And when they're looking at you, they're probably, you and Carl be like, let's scare them and get them the hell away from here. We like Sarah and Amy. Let's show them the best.
Well, the way that I had been thinking it was,
I like your theory, going with it.
But another thing, like, I was thinking is, it scared us out of there, literally.
Because you drove us out of there.
Yeah, but and even when it was making the little noises inside. I can't remember who it was. It was you or someone anyway said we're following it and we're giving it what it wants.
Yeah.
And whatever. But then it scared us. It literally, we think, was like fucking with us until we were on the track, and it was like touching, or me and Carl both got like physical shit happening.
Yeah.
And then we're halfway down and you guys start hearing like these party noises and screams or whatever. It's almost like it was saying, like, we did it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe this is like, they like pulled their resources or whatever it was. They scared us out of it, and then they're like mocking us as they're walking down. Like, look what we do have up here.
Kind of like Echo the mythology from Echo is that she can, like how she can only repeat the things that she's heard, right?
Right.
And so instead of just blatantly, like, you don't hear like a maniacal laugh or something, but the thing remembers the sound of celebration, associating it as, and so it uses that as a language to say like oh, it's happy.
Almost,
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
So cool. But I mean, it was just like, it was the screams that done me in more so than anything else, because screams are never a good thing, and they were like female screams. So, you know, part of you thinks it's just like, oh, someone needed help here at one stage.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes
what do you think, Amy? Do you think it's more like there's the like living energies that are just trying to like cohabitate in this place, or do you think it's all just become one thing and it gives you like, if when it's happy it emanates like the noise of party, and when it's mad it emanates shadow people? Which one do you think it is?
I think this is going to be really annoying. I think it's like right bang smack in the middle of the two. I think there are maybe a couple of things there that reside there, and they're the ones that are in charge. And they're the ones that are there as a result of sheer negativity, horrible things that have happened, you know, entities that can form like that. They're referred to as elementals, and they have no form. They just come from horror and misery and just sheer terribleness, and they smell awful, and they don't have form like that. They can adapt to different forms, but they've mostly been explained as like a grey mist or a black cloud. Sometimes it would take the appearance of a dog, but one of the things that always gives it away is its smell. So what I think happens up there is that there probably are like maybe one or two like along the lines of that up there, and they're up on this higher level, and then what's down below is kind of like the memory of the place and like the second part of it, like, you know, and the projection of happy, sad, all this sort of thing. But I think whatever else is there can step in and do what it wants when it wants. And that probably has the say over what happens altogether. That probably sounds absolutely
like
crazy.
The referee.
Exactly. It probably sounds absolutely crazy, but I don't think that if you were to say how many spirits were to be up there at this point, there's no way they could all cohabit. There's no way. Yeah, that's the thing as well. Like, I mean, the reaction that you do get, that I got the one time that I went there, and like seeing you guys getting as well, it was not a good one. And like that, it seemed very mocking. I do think it was something, because something was seen there and something was felt there. Like physically, that, you know, profile was seen there, do you know? And then you hear these sounds on the way down, and my head actually felt like it was going to burst, because I didn't think I could handle it, because I was scared, but I wasn't like when you're watching a movie scared, or when you're like, you know, walking down the street by yourself scared. I was just, because I didn't know what it was, but it didn't want us there, and it wasn't nice, and it wasn't good, and it made us all individually and collectively feel awful, like feel angry. That's what, in some cases physically unwell, like nausea, in some cases breaking out in sweats, and like that, so aggressive. Incredibly, like the level of aggression went from 0 to 100 incredibly quickly and incredibly steadily as well. Like, it was absolutely insane. Like, I felt it in myself, and I was like, why am I getting so annoyed? I have no reason to be this annoyed here. And then coming down, it was just fear, like really like cold kind of, I'm scared here, and I can't put my finger on why I'm scared, because I don't know what it is. And that's the horrible thing at the end of the day, is that we don't know what it is. Like, going up there is very different to reading about it. It is a magical place. It is a place that needs to be treated, I think, with respect and care and caution. And I think the experience that we had up there was amazing and terrifying. And it kind of brings you back, talking about it now, to how you felt that night. And I can still remember how like warm and cold at the same time that I felt. I was warm, but I was freezing at the same time, even though we were walking like so quickly, like, you know, back down the hill and stuff like that. And like, none of us were really even speaking to each other. It was just like,
And is one of the worst parts.
Fuming.
Yeah, one of the worst parts of that walk is because it's up the top of the hill. The trail brings you all the way around the back and then back to the front.
Oh.
So it like circles all the way around. Mm-hmm. So at one point, you're looking through the trees and all you can see is this fucking building, like
dark with no moon, no stars, and we were away.
That's the worst part of that.
That's the thing, and we were away for we weren't at the top of the hill at this stage, so the light pollution was not as strong as it was, and it is just this looming, ominous. Oh, yeah, scary.
Great experience, though.
Amazing experience. Will not repeat it. But I don't know. In the future, maybe I would repeat it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know. We'll go back. But, hopefully when it's a little bit.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I don't know what that is. It's fucking Halloween, okay? Chill.
Yeah, so look, this is our first
bonus episode.
I'm gonna go ahead and call it our first annual.
Oh, I see. Okay,
bonus
I see where
Halloween
you're going.
Episode.
Got it.
We can call it the boner episode. I don't mind. But we're going from talking all this negative energy and all that.
Let's bring it back.
We're positive.
Bring it back.
Manifesting
bring
here.
Bring it back.
Saying that we hope you've enjoyed all of the weekly creep that you've received so far.
Yeah.
And we're growing little by little every week.
Yeah.
And we're going to be here for next year. And we're going to have to do something even bigger because next year, again, positive manifesting, we're not going to be in lockdown. Maybe we'll be able to do our own real-time investigation or something.
Maybe we can record in Ireland soon.
Maybe we could record in the Hellfire Club next year.
Fuck that.
Okay, that was weird.
Yeah. Let's just.
Right, maybe we shouldn't do that.
That's what I was saying. Lately, since we've been recording, little weird shit has been happening, like weird noises and weird patterns of repetition to our audio. So we have no idea why that's going on.
Yeah.
I personally attribute it to those very few weird coincidences that have been happening in the house. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure you're going to disagree.
No?
I'm surprised. We hardly agree on anything. I don't know how we ended up married.
What is this?
What is this fluke?
But I will say, though, in our last interview there with Amy, there is some weird noise. And it's actually just me belching. I thought I was
that
off
is hilarious.
To the side. Yeah, and it happened while you were saying something pretty relevant and stuff. So I couldn't even. Usually I just edit out these fucking human noises, but this time I couldn't. So you might just hear that in the background.
Yeah.
Don't get panicked. It's just my gas.
Ooh, leave this in.
No.
Or leave this in. That's just me slapping myself.
Slapping my hams. Okay, this week...
Don't edit me, Adam.
This week we're going to leave our sources linked in the description box because there's just tons of them and I don't want to give a big old list like that.
Okay.
Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Totally Weird and Twisted podcast, or Twat podcast. They did this really cool Halloween greeting recording thing.
Yeah, imagine a Christmas card, but audio and not Christmas. It's like that.
Yeah, that describes it way better. I'm still not sure how we're going to release it. We might just release it on its own, but it's a huge network of paranormal and true crime podcasts, basically.
Yeah.
And everybody's just having a good time and saying hello. You can catch us at around the 4:20 mark. It's pretty brief. But yeah, anyway, hope everybody's staying safe and everybody has a good Halloween.
Yeah, keep your germs to yourself and we'll be fine.
Breathe inside your mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.